welcome to episode 44 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. And it's 2022, so Happy New Year, Mike.
Happy New Year, listeners.
That's right, or as they say here in Japan, Akemashite omedetou gozaimasu.
Yes, I've been hearing a lot of that.
You'll hear that for a little while. Pretend
the first
to be
3
happy.
days, anyway. One nice thing about Japan is New Year's here is a 3-day holiday.
Pretty
Unlike
much,
the
yeah.
1 day that you get in the West, because everybody's back to work on, this year the 3rd, I guess, but the 2nd usually. Here we're off until the 6th, but most people going back to work on the 4th here.
Yeah,
you get those 3 days.
It's not like it used to be. In the old days, everything completely shut down. Couldn't buy anything. If
I
you
remember
ran
that.
out
Even
of,
when I was here, that was happening.
Yeah, if you ran out of
that long ago.
milk or something, forget about it.
Yeah.
But now, although this year the supermarket's closed for 3 days, but there's a lot of businesses that are open on New Year's Day and, bring in the yen. I guess just like back in the U.S.
I guess some people, they get workers too. I guess some people just have to get away from their families and stuff,
Yeah, I can understand that.
Just like us.
Yeah, far away. We're so far away. If we went any further, we'd be closer. So,
oh boy, that made my head hurt.
It's assuming that
I'd rather not.
Assuming the world is not flat, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah,
that's not on this
for
podcast. Yeah.
That's for our other podcast.
Yes, that's right.
Russ and Mike challenge scientific, facts.
Yeah, I don't know how good we'd be at that. It would be
no, I don't think so. Well,
least,
we'd be good at. We wouldn't be good at challenging them, but we would be good at coming up with wacky alternatives.
I have a few about the early family of man, but anyway, so it's a new year.
I'd like to hear that, actually.
Oh, okay.
I would tune into that podcast, I think.
We'll call it something like that, yeah.
Right.
It goes back to a joke from The Sopranos, I think, but that's something else. So it's a new year. There's going to be a lot of new music, but we've still got a lot of things. Of course, I don't think anything has come out in the past 2 days, so we'll be dealing with...
Stuff will be coming out on the 7th, though.
The 7th,
It's always a Friday in classical musical, usually, anyway.
Yeah. But we've still got some winter releases to work through.
We'll have
a lot of them.
A month or two of that.
Yeah, we'll have to skip
and a
over
few new
some
things, too.
Yeah. So
these are new. They're just a few months. They're a month or two old.
They're still new. Still new enough.
New enough.
And it's good to, be free from Christmas music now. I feel like, my ears are going back to pre-Jingle Bells.
Technically, it's still Christmas, technically. It goes until the 5th. And then Epiphany is on the 6th, and then it's over then. That's it.
Yeah. I'm not feeling it anymore, though.
Yeah, they've done that to us. In the old days, we'd be like eating, drinking, and being merry for 12 days.
Yeah. I'm just eating and drinking. Not merry yet.
Not being merry.
We'll see what happens tonight. So before we go on our merrymaking music journey, I'd like to remind our listeners and any new listeners we have that in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify and Apple Music for all the music we'll discuss for streaming. Also at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist, all the music in one place on our preferred streaming platform, Deezer. Wherever you can also follow us at username Adult Music Podcast. We usually get the listening list up a week before the podcast if you want to hear the music before that. And you can listen to the podcast on Deezer as well. And we're on all the major platforms, including, obviously, the one you're listening to us now on. However, sometimes, depending on the platform, all of the links are not clear or the hyperlinks are not active. So if you have any problem following the links, come on over to our host app platform, Podbean, where you'll find everything easy to follow and well laid out. And if you enjoy the podcast,
gets uploaded.
Yeah, that's where we upload it. That's our host. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a review, that helps us get listed in the browsing category recommendations, and that helps us grow our audience, which gives us new listeners, and we're always happy to do that.
Yeah, or send us your top 10 list of classical and jazz recordings from last year. We'd love to see it.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
That'd be
I'm
fun.
sure it'd be better than the Grammy list. And if you have any other comments or with your list, please do contact us directly. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast. That's all one word, at gmail.com. Love to hear from you.
Yeah. So, let me see. Yeah, Liz, I had some friends who were, last week we did our best of the year, and I had some friends who were absolutely delighted that we put up all the links for for those recordings. Really? There were a lot of them. Yeah, but they were very happy.
Over the past year, we've been doing this. I've, through trial and error and refining the post-production things, worked on organizing things better, so I have everything at my fingertips, and I have everything categories in a good archive. But digging back through, remembering which episode we did each thing on did take some time. But I
scroll through.
I thought in case we got any new listeners or people hadn't heard anything, it would be good to have the links handy. So
yeah, and if you like if you think it's all very convenient to find, you have to give a hand to Russ for that, because if I were in charge, this would be the unmade bed of podcasts. I guess I'd try to put up a few links, but that's about it.
Well, if you haven't, if you're a new listener, or you've been busy for the holidays making merry, or enduring familial obligations, go back and check out our best of 2021, our favorite picks from last episode. There's a nice list there of both classical and jazz.
Yeah, I've been checking it out myself like all week. I have it all in my my iPod Touch, and I've been listening to it all. And I thought we made some excellent choices, I have to say.
Yeah, some good music there.
My favorite music of the year.
And every week we do this Sunday night. I get it all worked out, all the links and the rest of the information up Monday morning, and by that time Mike's got his new list for me, and I'm working on my selections.
Because he's doing the technical things, so I'm kind of already doing the list for next week.
Yeah, then I make my picks, I make the playlist, and we've got to start listening to the new stuff. So that's been how the last year has worked. So there hasn't been a lot of time to go back and listen to the things that I really did like. So it was nice to revisit everything.
It was, yeah,
and not listen to it and think about how I'm going to explain it, to just enjoy it, so.
Okay, so adult music has a New Year's resolution now. Of course, it's a New Year's resolution. We don't know that we're actually going to be able to achieve this, but we are going to try to put up a podcast every week this year. We're going to try to do the entire year, without missing a weekend. Well, that's our resolution.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Let's try it.
Yeah, if and we'll do it unless something comes up, which happens, but
who knows, solar flares knock out the internet, or
whatever,
we get censored or something.
We get censored. How are we going to get censored? You never know. These days everybody can get censored.
That's right. We'll have to have controversial guests on, I guess.
Who would that be?
I don't have no idea.
Who's controversial in jazz? I don't know. Or classical?
I don't know. Kenny G.
Maybe all of it, depending on your Kenny G. Oh boy! Did you hear Jazz United's kind of podcast on Kenny G? Wow, they really don't like him very much.
Yeah. Well,
I think Nate Chen is a little more accepting. I don't think he was too pro either, but he's kind of he's up pro, but he wasn't for Kenny G. But I'm just he's a little more kind of inviting and accepting, though.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
it was a good podcast. Check that out.
Kenny G is, he's not too worried, I don't think.
Yeah, he's not.
What we think about him. So
I am. I kind of dread the latest Kenny G release. It's gonna. Although these days it's not just gonna take over the radio like it did back in the day. You'd hear this one big pop song would come out or something, and that would be all you'd hear.
It's interesting.
Months.
This is an interesting
thing.
The way that music listening has changed since we were young.
Right.
And the only way and the only thing really to listen to other than music that you paid your cash for was the radio. And you had a few stations that churned out the same pop tunes until you couldn't stand them anymore. You had the classic rock. They played the same old tunes. And then you had the interesting stuff down on the left hand of the dial. And that's where I got my education in classical and jazz music, listening to college radio, and I used to
college radio
and some, well-produced college radio from Amherst that would float over into New York too. And then I would have to hit the library and borrow vinyl and listen to things. But you couldn't evade all of the nauseating pop music of the day. But these days, I don't even have any idea what that is because I haven't turned on the radio in years, because it's all online listening. So
yeah. I got to tell you my college radio story. I was a college radio DJ at the AM station we had that no one listened to. Oh. And one day I was feeling a little like I needed a little snack, maybe a little something to drink. So I put on a really long record. It was tied to the whipping post. I did the live version. I specifically remember. It was like, it took up the whole side. So I put it on. I go out, and I had to go outside the building into the what those days would have been a convenience store. These days they're 24 hours. And I go in there, and they're listening to the college radio on it, and the record was skipping.
Oh no!
It was skipping. So I heard that. I was like, "Oh no!" And I didn't say that. I said something a little nastier than that, and I just ran back to the studio. Right. Didn't get my food.
Oh man!
And that was that. If I were in charge, this podcast would be the equivalent of that. I'm just sure. I'm sure of it. So just be grateful that we have Russ here, everybody. Okay.
I try to keep the technical end of things going smoothly, but.
Okay, so anyway, it's a new year, and we're starting out with new music, and we figure by now your New Year's hangover should have gone away.
Yeah. Or you're still working on it.
Or you're still working on building it up.
Like me.
Oh boy. So let's give you something to put into your head. Now, last year we just our last episode was just all of our best of the year. So it's time to start on the best of 2022, and I think we've already got a candidate right here. We can't say because what's the top. I choose like a top 10. I might not choose this, but this is we're starting out with the year with a pretty fantastic piano album by one of adult music's favorite pianists, Danila Trifanov. Yes. We both like him a lot. Yeah, and this is Bach, The Art of Life.
Yeah, and it's a surprise because
it's on the Deutsche Grammophon label. I just want to say, Deutsche Grammophon. Got to give the label credit. Go ahead.
Trifonov has been prolific in the last few years, doing all kinds of things, but Bach is not something you're going to expect him to come up with because. He's done, a lot of Russian composers, romantic era things. Modernist. And so to go back to, Baroque is a bit of a surprise.
And he's an absolutely fantastic pianist, too. Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Well,
interesting.
Yeah, I've looked at some of the reviews and things around. So, you know how people are. They have their favorite versions of things. And
okay, I thought this was spectacular. Now it's the Bach family, but Johann Sebastian is the Papa Bach. There is the main draw. Like it starts out with his son, works by his sons, then it eventually gets to him. Now the centerpiece of this recording is the Art of Fugue, and I'm really willing to bet that that's what people had issues with, because this is very much a piano Trifonov sort of interpretation of this. I just got through listening to another podcast, the WTF Bach podcast, and they've just went through, or who was that? I wrote this guy's name down. Let me see. I remember his name was Ewan. I couldn't remember. The host of that podcast went through every fugue, one per episode, in the Art of Fugue, and really talked about it. He interviewed Christoph Wolff, who's the leading Bach scholar, about this. It was really nuts. If you really want to do a deep dive into the Art of Fugue, check out that podcast. It's pretty amazing. I thought when I was listening to this, though, I had to kind of throw that out the window because he's not really going for any kind of historical accuracy or sort of that type of performance here. But Trifonov is such an amazing pianist. Anyway, let me get into this. Okay, it's a 2 CD set or a very long MP3, I guess, or stream if you're listening to it that way.
There's a lot of Bach here. You probably want to break it up when you listen to it.
Yeah, I did it in 2 days. Although I was really compelled by it. I kept going, really. I went deep into the second CD, and then finally I was like, oh, got to go to bed. I finished it the next day. All right, so we start out with Johann Christian Bach. Okay, these are all Bach's sons. Sonata number 5 in A major, Opus 17, number 5, if you want to check that out. It's in 2 movements. And you get this pretty piano sound and a very clear recording, the first things that you notice about this album. It's played dry with very little pedal, but there is some discrete pedal in there. So it's a lot of times he gets a very like staccato type sound, especially in the Art of Fugue, which is probably what put off a lot of listeners. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Vikingur Olafsson, who's really has made that sort of style of playing his own. The lines in this are exceptionally clear, all the melodic lines. It's rather got a Mozartian feel to it. It's a classical sounding work, although I think it's a little... Actually, I don't remember his years. This might be a classical era work. There's pedal during the arpeggiated chorus and at the end of the exposition to signal the section and provide contrast. So he does a lot with the sound to let the listener know what the section is. I personally don't need that, but I think it's helpful a lot of times. It's also kind of interesting. I sort of like when the color changes in different sections. I like Trifonov's way of contrasting with the sound. He has a lot of tricks up his sleeve to color the various sections of the sonata movement. Very enjoyable to listen to. His playing brings a smile. I like that. And the second movement is the presto, similar melody, and I think it's the same key. It sort of seems to start on the same chord anyway, but it's faster. A lot of scalar and arpeggiated figuration. I like this a lot, this particular piece. This is a case I wrote here of the pianist, not the piece. The pianist makes the piece good. It's not like the piece is kind of making the pianist look really sharp. It's he really makes this piece a lot more than I think it is. So I really enjoyed this. There's a gorgeous sense of line in all voices and through both movements. Really great. Third track, Wilhelm Friedemann Bach, Polonaise number 8 in E minor, FK 12-8. I don't know what FK is. It's his cataloger, but I don't know who that was. This is a very quiet song-like piece. I always think of a Polonaise as a dance, so I was kind of...
I thought it was a dessert.
You thought Polonaise? Did you enjoy that? Yeah. Polonaise? Was it delicious?
Yes.
I can't imagine what that would even... If a Polonaise was a dessert...
Yeah.
Oh, you think it'd have fresh cream?
Yeah.
I can't... that didn't bring up an image for me. What would that be like?
I'm just goofing, that's all right.
I know, but I'm always kind of trying to go along with that and say, what would that be like? Anyway, it's an elegant work, played with clarity and poise. Poise, there's a word you don't hear too often anymore, but there's a lot of poise in this. He makes it appealing, and he brings out the harmonic idiosyncrasies when they occur. His playing has a laser-like focus on the melodic line and its harmonies, and had me focusing intently. I wasn't really, my mind wasn't wandering there in this. He really kept my attention. Next, one of our favorite composers, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. He is the oldest surviving son of Johann Sebastian, and we like him for his quirky sense of humor. And there's a lot of that in this piece, Rondo in C minor. What Quo, I know this one, 59, WQ 59. A rather ebullient theme in this one, with those quirky hesitations and oddities of harmony that we're familiar with in good old CPE's music. What's catching my ear is Trifonov's ability to separate each note, even in quick figures. He has the humorous sense of timing required to put this across, which is a new quality that I'm discovering in him. I didn't know he had a sense of humor. You don't know, but this music brings it out. I'm certainly hoping he'll do an entire album of CPE Bach's music. I think he'd be really excellent in it. Do you think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
this was great.
To tell you the truth, just to break up, there's a long list of things here, but what I've liked about him, I I really love Rachmaninoff works.
Yeah.
But there's a danger in Rachmaninoff, to become sort of over emotional. Because there's so much emotion and drama in that works. And when I first heard Trifonov's playing of that, it was very restrained and with just enough. He never indulges in that. He just plays it with just enough touch of emotion and doesn't dwell on anything too much. And I really liked that. So I really wondered, how is he going to handle the Bach? And I've been listening to this recording since it came out. And I thought it showed another side of him, but he handled it equally as well. And I think he got the jokes in the humor in the CPE Bach, and he handled it, really nicely. And so for me, it was like, oh, this is a different side of him that we haven't seen yet. So
one thing he does on this particular piece, and this is why I want to hear him play more CPE Bach, is he will slightly pause when an odd harmonic note comes in. It's it's almost imperceptible, but it catches you because you're not getting the flow, and then he'll hit that odd note to make it stand out. It's really cool.
We've heard performances, or one recently, that just sort of glossed over that kind of thing. I think in the interpretation of CPE Bach's music, like I say, you can emphasize those sort of quirks and interesting things that are sort of, it's almost like a stand-up routine, and the timing of the joke is everything. But if you just keep going on, it's easy to just not notice it. So it's kind of nice that he's noticing it and bringing it to the listener's attention, so that, you catch these sort of, interesting things that stand out in his music.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we're spending a lot of time on Carl Philipp Emanuel here. This is the only track of his on the entire album. But we're just such big fans. We're going to have a Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach album pretty soon, actually, by another pianist with a good sense of humor, Marc-André Hamelin. That's coming out next week, actually. Well, we won't have it on the podcast next week, but
it's coming out.
We will be talking about it, though. But it's coming out next week. I'm going to have to. It's on Hyperion too.
I've seen that. So you can't listen to it.
We can't listen to it on Deezer or any other streaming site.
No.
We're gonna have to acquire the CD, and it's expensive too. It's a double album. They're killing me. All right, next, Johann Christoph Friedrich Bach. Boy, there were a lot of Bachs. There were women Bachs too, but none of them are on this album. They had her compose as well, But anyway, all the sons. The sons all had professional positions though in their lives, so they all went to the ends of Europe and took up some chair there. Anyway, this is Alegreto Convariatzioni on a tune called "A vous dirai-je maman," which means "Shall I tell you, Mom?" Okay, and the line is, "Shall I tell you, Mom, what is tormenting me?"
No, don't tell your
mom. And it goes like, "A vous dirai-je maman." You probably recognize that melody as "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" if you speak English. So this is the French kind of folk song version of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." That's basically what it is. There are one or two extra notes to accommodate the French text, though. Mozart set these as a set of variations. That's the really famous one. And his is rather spare, and then it gets into some involved variations. This one's very different, though, than what Mozart did. Okay, they separated all these variations into different tracks. I don't understand why they do this. Are you really going to go and listen to one variation? Oh, I want to hear the fifth variation. And you're going to go to track 23 to hear that or something?
It's a little bit too much pausing between them, yeah. It's like you're kind of ready to get on to the next one.
Yeah, and I think it's around a 20-minute piece. I mean, just put it on one track, I don't know. The theme isn't played as nakedly and simply as it is in Mozart's version. It's a little more sort of decorated right away. And right away in Variation 1, Trifonov is showing his athletic ability at the keyboard, playing fast with a highly articulated sense of the line. Very beautiful. Sometimes the theme is clearly articulated in the variations, and sometimes it's well hidden. But you'll recognize it through the chords, basically. It's not too hard to follow. The 19 tracks go by pretty fast, and it's not even though it has 19 tracks, it's a fairly short work. All the variations are a minute or around a minute long. Okay, next, tracks 24 to 35 on disc 1 are Notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach, selections from that. Now, if you've ever played the piano, if you studied the piano or took piano lessons when you were younger, you inevitably played quite a few of these works. And I have to say, what a pleasure it is to hear them played by a professional pianist, because you usually hear them played by some kid who's plunking out the notes on the piano, and just to hear them played with such a beautiful line like this is a real treat. Let me see. What do I want to say here? I'm not going to go through all of these. They're all really short, except that there are a few that are very, very familiar. Let me see. The Minuet in G major, composed by Christian Petzold. Yeah, everybody's played that one. I played it, and I hammered it out too, just like all those kids. It's very elegant here, and it really made me smile. I liked that one a lot. The Polonaise in G minor, track 33, was composed by Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. Soft and loud contrasts in this one, which I really enjoyed too. I just want to say, this isn't all works by Bach or the Bach family. They're just probably family favorites. It's kind of comes across as sort of like a photo album in sound, if you can think of that. It's just kind of probably things that they really liked. Nice little set to have. Okay, track 36. Brahms's transcription of Bach's Chaconne in D minor. It's originally the famous solo violin Chaconne. This is for the left hand only. So it's kind of interesting because the harmony is filled out, but there's a real narrow range of what's being played in this. It sort of sounds. Brahms keeps it close to the range of the violin that the violin uses, because it's just the left hand. Well, the violin, you can play high and low notes, but with the left hand you really can't. You can only go like an octave or maybe one or two notes more than that, right? If you have giant hands. So there's a total change of tone here in this heavy work. This is just using only your left hand alters the entire tone that Trifonov is playing with, because the tonal range is really limited. So this was interesting. I liked hearing it, but I was kind of like, wow, it just felt like I was kind of constricted. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have that wide range. Even the violin gets a wide range. It just can't play the chords. That's the only thing. Yeah. But yeah, this was kind of a bit of an oddity. Again, he's got such amazing evenness, clarity of scales, and some of the effects he achieves are of two hands. Like he's got that trills going with in the high end while the bass notes are playing the melody. It's amazing. It's kind of because he's only doing that with one hand, and it's all very clear. Anyway, worth hearing. All right, next we get to the main event, Johann Sebastian Bach, the Art of Fugue. This is the entire thing. It's about a little more than an hour long, I'd say, and it kind of gets divided between discs 1 and 2. Now, this is probably, you said some of the reviews didn't like this, and this is probably the work that did that, because there are Bach purists out there, and they're not going to like this. Okay? Because this is very much it's very much a piano interpretation of this, and Trifonov uses the resources of the piano to put this across. Now, he doesn't play it in a romantic way. He is using the mostly quieter sounds and very little pedal, if any, to play it. But he's getting a lot of effects you just couldn't possibly get on a keyboard of Bach's time. Right. We're not going to talk about all 14 of these different ways of approaching this the Art of Fugue theme. They're all in the same key, all of the contrapunctus. And once we get to the very end, Contrapunctus 14, which is the famous unfinished one, Trifonov himself finished it, and plays his version of it. He starts it very quietly, almost like in a church-like way. By the 6-minute mark, the volume has increased in a subtle, gradual crescendo. He does this quite a bit. He'll often start one of these we can't really call them movements, but a contrapunctus, like very loud, and then the next one will be soft. There's a lot of contrast, and again, that's gonna make the Bach purist angry. But there you go. Yeah. But by the time the music reaches a resolution at the 7-minute mark, I'm talking about Contrapuntus 14 now, the unfinished one. It reaches peak volume, and then a different section starts. The dynamics start to quieten again by the 8-minute 30 mark. So the entire work is played like a gigantic arch, which certainly is not what Bach intended as far as dynamics are concerned. I certainly think these are worth hearing just because of the prowess of the pianist here. It's really amazing playing, if not an ideal sort of interpretation of this. But again, all the voices in these are very clear. It's really incredible, the gradation of tone he gets. It just gives me a headache to even imagine him approaching this, playing like this. The disc ends with Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, from the Cantata Herz und Mund und Tat und Leben, BWV 147. This is the version arranged by Myra Hess, I believe at the beginning of the 20th century. This is very familiar. You've heard this. You probably heard this at weddings. In fact, it gets played at a lot of weddings. At least in Japan it does. Here it's played quietly with a floating quality to the triplets, and we feel freed from the tight intellect of the Art of Fugue. It's kind of a nice choice. Maybe a little whipped cream there, like the a little polonaise for dessert, as Russ would have it.
Palate cleanse.
Yeah, palate cleanse.
Yeah.
Okay, he takes this slowly and meditatively, a gentle ending to a fantastic program. You can spend the album marveling at the playing, but I'd advise you to just enjoy what you're getting here because it's very rare. Again, not for purists, but just for lovers of great piano playing. This is really staggering and thoroughly enjoyable, I thought.
Yeah, I've been listening to it since it came out. As a matter of fact, on the various systems that I listen to, I download our playlist every week so that I have it like on my phone to go and listen to headphones and everything else if I listen on my main system or whatnot. But this, as soon as it came out, I had it downloaded.
Yes, we like him a lot.
Just because when I listen to it on Deezer, when you have those really short movements, the gapless playback usually works, but when you have so many of short tracks, sometimes it doesn't.
Variations.
Yeah, so I didn't want to lose or have any extra gaps in there, and so it's been, downloaded and listening to it. And yeah, I'm not a purist when it comes to this, but I'm just a fan.
Me neither.
I'm a fan of Trifonov, and so as usual, what he brings to everything he plays, I thought, is a beautiful touch. Wonderful kind of tone colors associated with that touch. He can sort of, make a single piano sound like a different instrument when he wants to. Elegant phrasing. And then I thought with all of these works, and especially in the Art of the Fugue, he's got nice variety in the tempos and dynamics. Not too much, but just enough to make contrasts so that you don't get sort of lulled into a submission in the longer works. He keeps it very interesting there. And as I alluded to before, what I liked about his romantic works is that he never played them overly emotional. I
like that about him in general.
Yeah, I like that music, here too. It's a completely different style. I feel like he adds just enough. I don't feel that it's too much. And so I guess now that I hear him in a completely different, time period and style, I like, that characteristic of his playing, no matter what he's approaching.
Yeah, it's an inventive, bold program as well. No one else would come up with something like this, I don't think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're blessed to have a player like him. He's everything I've heard from him, I pretty much enjoyed so far, and I'm glad that he's, it has to be a lot of pressure as someone that has as much, attention on him as him. This has to be something he really wanted to do, because I think, with the purists and the other great recordings of these works that it's going to be compared to, he had to have enough, sort of determination and belief that the way he was going to do these was going to add something to the existing body of recordings of them. And I enjoyed it. And I just think, okay, what's he going to tackle next? And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I just want to say, by the way, the Art of Fugue, you should mention, they were fairly gapless themselves. He doesn't really pause much between the... in fact, he doesn't pause. Like, he'll hold one of the notes and then he'll start the next fugue, which also would be, I guess, a kind of sacrilege to some people. I want to say what my feeling is about this kind of, about purity in music in general. If you're going to keep going for, I think, the same... this perfect approach, and everybody's kind of getting closer and closer to it. That's really exciting for scholars only. I don't think the general listening public is going to get involved in that. I'm perfectly happy to hear just sort of even odd interpretations of famous works, as long as it's not something that everybody starts doing, and then we lose the purist approach. Once that starts happening, I'm going to start panicking and saying something about it. But I don't think we have that issue. There are plenty of scholar keyboardists out there who are keeping the what's the expression I'm looking for here? They're keeping the flame burning. I
think of this in a similar way that I think about religious type of things too.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that the sort of human elements, the human sort of sullying of religion is the same across religions in different cultures.
I think that's true.
And, looking at different religions, here in Japan and things that I've, comparing to Western culture, and then historically, it's the same ugly heads that always pop up. And, there's a right place for orthodoxy and tradition. That's important. At the same time...
I feel that way too. Yeah.
At the same time, this happens in all genres of music, right? You have the staunch sort of, conservative listeners who always want, that music to play it in a certain way. It's even in look at blues music, for example.
Right.
You have a lot of interesting people like Robert Cray, Keb Mo, who are really good blues musicians, but they're not afraid to, do something more modern or mix other styles with it. And that really makes some people angry. Why don't they just play?
Right.
Why don't they just stick with this? It's the same thing. If he were to do that, do we really need another recording of this kind of music? Do we need another one in the same style so we can compare the minutiae of if it's as good as... No, we don't, really. I don't think so. I think if we have a great talent like Trifonov, I think let's see what his interpretation is and let him take the chance. And, there's going to be some misses here and there with, even great performers, but that's what makes it interesting.
I don't think there are any misses here. This is definitely what he wanted, so... No.
Yeah, but even if everyone doesn't like it, who cares? I mean, that's one thing I look, even with especially with pop musicians, my thing is if I like everything they've done, eventually it gets boring because that means the boundaries are too narrow. And
they found a formula, sort of repeating that formula.
Yeah, and pretty soon everything's going to start to sound the same. I think that can happen in any genre too. So, yeah, I applaud, revisiting or having a new take on things that are established and shaking things up a little bit. I don't think this goes too far with it. I think anyone would enjoy it. I certainly did. So bring it on.
The idea about fugues is all the voices are supposed to be evenly played, and he's definitely terracing them, so that you can make them all out.
Yeah.
That's fine though. It's more exciting, really, in a way, to hear it played that way. Then you can go back to another one, and that's where they are actually played the way scholarship says it's supposed to be, and then you hear it with new ears. I think this serves a purpose that way as well. All right, on to our second classical release. This is also from I think in the autumn, the autumn it would be. The Escher String Quartet, playing string quartets by Samuel Barber and Charles Ives, two American composers.
Speaking of that, I need a haircut. When are the barber shops open again? Oh, sorry.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, Barber. Oh, that's right. Oh, you always catch me with those.
Gotcha.
All right.
Gotcha.
I actually had a joke about him too, Samuel the Barber, like Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Samuel the Barber. No, a new work by Samuel the Barber. Okay. Well, Samuel Barber, okay.
Yes.
Obviously, there was a barber in his family somewhere. It would be ironic if there wasn't, wouldn't it?
It'd be pretty interesting. Yeah.
This is on the Beast label, and it's an SACD if you buy the
nice.
physical disc. Now, I should just mention, an SACD, a commercially released SACD will play on a CD player. It's got 3 layers of recording on it. There's a CD layer, and that'll just play in your ordinary CD player. Then there's a 2-track SACD layer, and my personal favorite, the 5.1 track CD layer. The 0.1 is the woofer, the subwoofer. So you get these 3 different kind of, I guess, versions of the same performance. It's kind of nice. You and I are actually big fans of DSD recording, like the Super Audio CD. I think it sounds a bit different than the CD part.
Maybe.
It's a little
I don't
more
know.
warmth.
My feelings have changed over the years listening. I mean, I've had SACD for a long time. All I can definitely say with it is when they bother to put most things in classical music on SACD, and if it was a native DSD recording, which I think is a really important part, then usually the care taken in the recording by the engineers has been top notch. Whether or not the DSD actually sounds better or the SACD sounds better than the CD, more important than that, and the most important thing in, I think, all of the recording is that the engineers have treated it like their baby. They really cared about everything in the recording. And usually on Beast, that's the case too. Because their recordings always sound good. And
that's true.
Yeah. And so
they released a lot of their albums on SACD, like a majority of them.
And if the ones that were, because the thing with DSD is, and the reason you can't use it really for most other kinds of music is if you have to edit it, you can't edit it in the DSD, so you have to change it back to PCM, and then it's sort of a moot point. It's just sort of getting that label. So, in classical music allows for more pure recordings because it doesn't need to be processed and mastered, in so many ways. So
that is done.
Yeah, it is done.
Sorry to say.
Yeah, but I think. In any style of music, and that's the reason I think, so much of the older recordings were really great in both classical and jazz because they were more organic and captured more of the room sound with the musicians not being isolated. They just had a limited number of microphones, and it went down, and they took it with warts and all, but you got that great natural character of spatial things. Well, that seems to be, it's debatable. Some people will say it's not different. In some cases, I really think those DSD recordings capture some spatial quality. Is it because of the format or just because of the attention paid to the recording process? I don't know. But some of them do sound really good.
Yeah,
and this is a really good label for sound quality.
BIS, check that out.
BIS, BIS. Does that stand for something, by the way? I'm not sure.
I think it's just BIS, like what the French say when. It's not a French label. When they want an encore, they say BIS.
Because it's
BIS.
like capital letters,
Yeah, but they're not a French label though. I think they're Swedish or there's some Scandinavian, or maybe Danish. I'm not sure, but they're somewhere up in the north there. Okay. I didn't look that up. Anyway, first we have Samuel the Barber. Samuel Barber's only string quartet in B minor, Opus 11. This might surprise some people. This is the origin. The middle movement of here is the piece that became the Adagio for strings. One of the most famous pieces there is. It started life as the middle movement of this string quartet. So you're hearing the original version here. Let's get to that in a moment. This piece was composed in 1936 when Barber was only 26 years old. That means he composed the Adagio for strings, one of the great classical works of the 20th century, and really of all time, when he was 26. Oh, man. All right, so this piece, all right, I'll talk about it more when we get to that movement. The first movement, Molto Allegro and Appassionato. This is a 3-movement work. This starts with a big unison upward melody. The rhythm continues for the opening theme. There's a huge pause before the second quieter theme. It's sensitively played. And also, this is another performance that doesn't gush. Like we were talking about how Trifonov kind of is a bit more restrained. This particular ensemble, the Escher String Quartet, is restrained as well. This work could, have a lot more.
You could milk it more, yeah.
Yeah, you can milk it more. Now, so that's going to be your taste, whether you like this version better or like a more milked one, shall we say? Maybe we should have something about cows in the title for this
maids of milking
episode.
Or something. Yeah.
The milkmaids or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, milk it, baby.
That could get your cream for your polonaise.
Ooh,
when you put it in there.
We got all the cream. We had a milk theme here today that we're creating out of nothing. So I don't know. Okay, and this hearing this had me already anticipating the famous second movement, because I feel like we're in good hands here. There's something hymn-like about the harmonies and the chords in the first movement. Some of the long-held chords already anticipate the famous climax of the second movement. He's setting us up, but as we know from the Adagio for Strings, he doesn't have to set us up in order for that movement to make its impact, because we've heard it a million times now. It's hard to hear this with fresh ears because you already know what's coming in the second movement. I keep trying to imagine what it would have been like for the first audience. It's an interesting, highly enjoyable, and evolving movement. It's a shame this string quartet isn't played more. I wish the quartet were played more for this reason, but I do have an issue with it, and we'll get to that in a second. Not with the first movement, though. Okay, second movement, Molto Adagio. This is the famous work that was later orchestrated for a string orchestra with the title Adagio for Strings. Here, let me tell you a little bit about that first. Arturo Toscanini first performed it in a nationwide broadcast, so it became famous overnight. That version was also broadcast at the death of FDR, the president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and at the funeral of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. It says here the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. I don't know what that means, maybe with the images of all of that. David Lynch also used it at the death of the Elephant Man in his film, and it was also used as a recurring musical theme in Oliver Stone's movie Platoon, which is really what gave it new life for our age. So it's just ubiquitous. We've heard this a lot of times. The string quartet version is rarely heard, sadly. The sound is a bit more anemic than the full-throated orchestral arrangement, but like I said, I think this would have benefited from a bit more milking. But it's they're very attentive to the form and the tone, and it's sort of it's a little held back. And for lovers of form and things like that, would really like this interpretation. It's of a piece with the rest of the quartet, the way the whole thing is played. So we'll have to cleanse our ears and minds for this. Textures are, of course, much cleaner and clearer since we're only hearing 4 instruments. And the approach to the big central climax is rather understated, but it builds up nicely. The ensemble doesn't dig deep, but that's not what they're after here. They're after balance. Mm-hmm. And I think they achieve that. And again, they're a bit restrained in this entire work. They're more concerned with fitting the movement into the whole. Harmonic detail rings out, not as powerful as the orchestral version, but the lines are well judged. I personally thought that the first violin misjudged the volume at the climax because it comes out like a lot louder than the rest of the instruments. It must have been intentional because that's what they went with. It kind of sticks out, I thought. That said, though, it's a fine, deeply felt rendering of the movement. Okay, now we come to the problematic third movement. It's really a continuation of the second movement. It's only 2 minutes long. And it's labeled Presto. And it's really a repeat of some material from the first movement. So it's almost like the two movements, the first movement and this last section are like a picture frame for the middle. He already knew he had something great with the Adagio movement. Barber had a hard time finishing the quartet. since he didn't know how to follow up the spectacular second movement. As I said, he knew it was pretty great. The work was premiered in 2 movements, so it just ended with that. He originally had a lively jig-like Allegro molto rondo in B major, preceded by a slow introduction, and we're going to hear that in just a moment. Well, we're not going to hear it here. You're going to hear it when you listen to this album because it's the 4th track. It was well received when it was finally premiered a few months after the 2-movement version, but Barber didn't like it, and I think that's a shame because I liked it, and published the quartet as a 2-movement work in 1943. Before publishing the quartet, though, in 1943, he took material from the first movement and attached it to the end of the second movement, making the second movement a 2-minute movement. Well, let me see. He made the second movement have 2 parts, basically. So this 2-minute movement really is just an extension of the second movement by putting the first movement theme at its end to frame it. So you can think of the entire string quartet as like a big ABA ternary form movement, I guess. What's the point of extending it this way if we know that the Adagio strings are so well? He shouldn't have even done that. So I find this version problematic. Now, the original 3rd movement can be heard on track 4. I like the way this starts. It's got a slow, lilting melody. I had never heard this before. This was the first time. The faster part is bubbly and enjoyable. It's a real contrast to the second movement, and I liked that a lot, too. It kind of takes it away from us a little bit. And a welcome one at that, because the second movement is so powerful. I guess this movement as a whole doesn't balance the powerful second movement. It probably needed to be longer, but I thought it was really enjoyable. I kind of wish you had kept this and maybe made it a little longer so that all the tension gets released by the end in the whole quartet. But there you go. Samuel Barber, String Quartet. Give it a listen.
Yeah, I like this one. Everyone knows that melody. I hadn't listened. Maybe I have a recording, so I hadn't listened to it in a long time as a quartet. But overall, I thought it's a nice mixture of their interpretation. It captures enough of the excitement, but as it's on a smaller scale. But it's quite beautiful in the way that it's put forth. So, kind of odd knowing the history of it and all the painful decisions he was fraught with making on that. So, we listen to it, you think, oh, this sounds great. And to think that, the composer is so dissatisfied with that he had all these permutations of, different versions of it. So,
one of the things my experience as a creative artist, this is true in songs and it's true in writing as well. I have that book, Extreme Music, and there are a lot of parts I wanted to cut out of the book. I was like, okay, what can I cut here? And I just kind of didn't cut much of anything and put it out. And all the parts that people talk to me about are the parts that I wanted to cut out. It's like almost uncanny.
Yeah,
how
that's interesting.
The artist himself almost knows least about what's going to appeal about his work than the audience does. And then the parts that I thought were really funny and really great, nobody ever commented on. So it's just my little enjoyment for myself, I guess. That always happens.
It does.
Fans often say the song they were going to cut from the album became the big hit and stuff like that.
Well, the riskiest things become the best sometimes too. I find in jazz music that way too. These days with multi-tracking and overdubs, musicians can go back and if they clammed something, clam is a mistake. We say
clam is a good word. Clam is for brass, though, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, we say it was trumpet players. Yeah. If you played something bad. And you say, I didn't like that. Well, you just go back and punch in and redo it. So you can get these note perfect, versions of things, and they're boring. It's great to listen.
Your subconscious hears it too, even if you don't,
It's great to listen to those old recordings. And now, with reissues, they have multiple takes, but it's great to hear a player challenge themselves and paint themselves into a box. And they're like, oh, now look what I've done. And now you've got to play your way out of it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But that whole sort of, process of getting yourself into a tight corner and getting out of it is interesting. on a small scale with jazz solo, where it's, improvised composition at the moment, but also in classical music too, where you're making these bigger decisions and you're wondering, does this going to fit the whole, arc of the composition? And I think it's hard for the creator to know how the audience is, or the listener is going to take that. And it depends what you're listening for too. If you're a perfection kind of person, but if you want to be challenged and find something interesting and try to understand the process of it, even those, maybe less than ideal things from the composer or writer's point of view can be the most interesting sort of things that bring you in deeper. So I'm glad we can hear these, different versions or things that may have been left out historically, but now you can hear them as they were, maybe not intended, but at a previous sort of level, this was the way it was going to go.
Right. Always the higher level, I think. So the mistakes come out at the when you're really playing by the seat of your pants,
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to this album, we have 2 string quartets by a composer that Samuel Barber absolutely hated, Charles Ives.
Was that Burl's brother? No.
No, nothing to do with, I don't know. You never know. He could, but they're from different parts of the country, I think.
Yeah,
but
I guess. Yeah.
You never know.
I just say that
there
because
could be some weird distant cousin. Because Christmas just ended.
On the last of the Christmas days, I was subjected to some Burl Ives. So
where was that, on the radio?
Yeah, I had an internet radio going.
They put like Holly Jolly Christmas on there or something?
Yes.
Oh, man. No one ever covers that. Only him. It's really funny.
Now that you say that, it's interesting, yeah.
It's true, isn't it? Because you would think it's a popular song. People would, record it, but they don't. It's really strange.
That's right. I've never heard another version of that.
Yeah, what if Nora Jones had sung it? That would have been really odd.
Well, my mind is trying to imagine that.
I know. My mind just broke too, just trying to imagine what that would sound like. Maybe she'll record it one day and let us know. Anyway, Charles Ives, I actually should have looked up how many string quartets he wrote, but we get 2 of them here. I don't know, this may be it, but we get string quartets number 1 and 2. First, string quartet number 1, subtitled From the Salvation Army, a Revival Service. And that word revival should give you a big hint about what's in here. This is a piece that's completely structured on hymn tunes, American hymns that you would hear in Protestant churches at the time of Charles Ives was living. This was written from the year... Okay, it's hard to date Charles Ives' works because he lied about the year he wrote them on. He wanted them to seem older so that he was younger when he wrote them than they really were, so he predated them a lot. So we've got the dates for this, 1897 to 1909. So he probably was working on them more in 1909, but they're dated like 1897 or something like that. This is a large-scale tonal composition. Now, that word tonal is very important because Charles Ives' music is often not tonal. His earlier works are. He was writing, he kind of sounded like Brahms a lot. But then when he got into his odd sort of experiments, that went away. Why compose like Brahms when Brahms is composing like that already? Yeah. So, but I guess, you start by imitating your masters or whatever. Okay. The thematic unity comes from the American hymns in this one. Whenever I hear Charles Ives' music, and this piece especially because it's so tonal, it makes me feel how far away from and out of touch with his era we are. This is America, right? That he's of his era that he's really preserving in music. And for me, it just seems like this long ago, far away place that just doesn't exist anymore. A lot of these themes, they would have been just familiar, just from going to church every week, I guess, or just from singing groups or at the time or whatever. Right. But I don't know many of them. Well, I know them because I've researched them, but I don't know them as just kind of floating around the culture, sort of the way a lot of these songs generally do. All of the hymn melodies and patriotic songs that he uses were in the air at the time, and they're part of the cultural fabric, and they're not anymore, although they kind of, some of them are, I guess. Most of them I didn't know until I researched them. things like Turkey in the Straw. I mean, nobody knows that anymore. Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean, that comes up a lot in his music. And in fact, it's going to come up in the second string quartet. I think it might come up in this one too. Anyway, let's take a look. This string quartet is a 4-movement work. It starts with a chorale, and this is a fugue with a subject based on missionary hymn. By the way, when I mention these hymn tunes, you can hear them on YouTube or on the internet. So if you're going to listen to this album with these quartets, you might want to do that. It'll make them more fun because you're kind of recognizing these melodies as though it's like something familiar out of this real kind of, in the second movement, more cacophonous sort of the second quartet, a more cacophonous approach. Here, this is actually pretty, pleasant to listen to. So a chorale, as we know from Bach, is it's usually not a fugue. It's sort of it's a hymn sung in church, and it's chords. So whenever you hear a chorale, you're hearing just a progression of chords in 4-voice harmony. And let's see. This one, the fugue is based on a missionary hymn, and it's got a counter subject based on the hymn called Coronation. So check those out. They're very simple in structure and rather anthemic in tone. All the hymns are. They need to be sung by the congregation, so they're usually pretty simple. They're always simple. You can also hear a bit of Bach's organ work, toccata, and fugue in D minor in one of the episodes of this movement. That's the one that starts da-da-da, da-da-da-da, the really famous toccata and fugue in D minor. He gets a little fragment of that in there. Ives later orchestrated the fugue and used it in his 4th symphony, after which he removed it from the quartet. So a lot of people know it as a 3-movement work. This is another, boy, Americans just can't be satisfied with what they've created here, right? So we're hearing the original version here, which is nice. Okay, we're hearing the original 4-movement version. The fugue was reinstated 7 years after Ives' death, when the Ives scholar John Kirkpatrick persuaded editors to reinstall it. Ives scholar J. Peter Burkholder argues that the chorale movement should be included because it is linked to the finale through cyclic repetition. So structure makes this movement necessary, is what he's saying. It's strange to hear a hymn tune as a fugue subject, I have to say, being taken up by the other voices in the quartet. It's very down to earth. The movement and the fugue is really a bit of a highfalutin style, and yet you're hearing all these down-to-earth melodies in it. So it's kind of an odd juxtaposition. The movement kind of chugs along for long sections, and the melody starts ringing out of the different voices in a bell-like fashion towards the end. Okay, second movement. Prelude. You would think that would be the first movement, right? It's called Prelude. And then Allegro. And this and the rest of the movement are in ternary form. So the second, third, and fourth movement are all ternary form, A, B, A. So it's going to be a middle section. And then the opening will repeat at the end. The quartet is romantic in tone. All movements use hymns as the starting point. I already said that. And the A section in this movement, the second movement, is based on Beulah Land, another one that I had to look up. I didn't really know that one. And the B section uses Shining Shore, so check those out. Ives does occasionally reveal the identity of the hymns melodically, but mostly they're varied in rhythm and harmony to the point where their identity only flashes out of the texture due to added or subtracted notes. It's kind of fun to be able to identify them when they go flashing by like that. This movement has a charming opening with the melodic familiarity and down-to-earthness pulling me right in. The Escher String Quartet is right at home in this music. They play it with a natural feeling. Third movement, offertory, another kind of church word. The offertory is when you offer money to the plate. Yeah, they pass the plate around. Adagio cantabile. The A section is based on Nettleton, which is a hymn named after one of its attributed composers. And the B section is based on Shining Shore and Nettleton, so it's kind of, they're combined here. This is similar in tone to the previous movement, but there's something Dvorakian about the middle section. It kind of sounds like the Ninth Symphony and some of the themes. Well, no, not the Ninth Symphony, the American String Quartet by Dvorak. I think that's, I don't remember which one that is, number 14 maybe. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that. The American Quartet, yeah. Okay, by Dvorak. That's a beautiful work. Check that out. And the fourth movement, postlude, Allegro Marziale, which means like martial or like, I guess marching. It'd be like a marching army here.
It is a bit march-like, yeah.
Yeah, the A section is based on Coronation again. Another hymn called Web, which is named after its composer, and fragments of Shining Shore. The coda, at the very end, combines Web and Shining Shore. Again, similar in profile to the previous two movements. I don't think there's enough variety in this quartet to sustain all that much interest, really. The second, third, and fourth movements are kind of similar, except that the tunes are all catchy, so it's kind of fun to listen to. The performance is lively and sensitive. Big grand ending. All right. Track 9, Scherzo, Holding Your Own. This is a 2-minute work. I remember hearing this live for the first time when I was in my 20s. I believe a string quartet played it when I heard it at Harvard University at the Sanders Theater. A memorable memory from that era. The cello part in both A sections of this ABA form presents a quod libet. In Latin, that means anything and everything. It literally means that as you like, or that you like, things you like, okay? A quod libet is a composition in which well-known melodies or texts are presented simultaneously or successively, the result being humorous or displaying technical virtuosity. There's a quod libet, the very last of the Goldberg variations is a quod libet before we hear the theme again. And they would have been, again, tunes famous in Bach's time that, of course, we don't know. That's the case here, too. Except, we kind of know these a little bit. In rapid succession, we hear, now these just go flashing by, Bringing in the Sheaves, Masses in the Cold Ground, My Old Kentucky Home, Sailor's Hornpipe, and the last one is Streets of Cairo, which concludes the A section with a polytonal canon. Yeah. Streets of Cairo, you know something about this one, right? This was named after this woman who, I don't know if she was actually Egyptian, but she danced the hoochie coochie.
That's right.
That's this. Yeah.
When he was on a trip, what was his uncle in his youth or something?
Yeah, and he just remembered this.
Hoochie coochie dance, and
it
inspired this composition. Yeah.
Should we think of a hoochie coochie as jazz, right? Because of
Hoochie Coochie Man.
Oh, it's a blues tune. It's a Hoochie
tune,
Coochie Man. Yeah. But it was apparently a dance. Okay, the quod libet and its accompaniment are pretty dizzying and off kilter. This is a very brief movement at 1 minute and 20 seconds. All right, next, a work that obsessed me all week long. Jeez. And not because I particularly liked it, okay, but I'll explain why. The String Quartet number 2. It's been said that string quartets are like four people talking among themselves. That's what was said about Haydn's string quartets. He liberated the lower voices, and it sounded like they were all these genteel people at a dinner table having a witty conversation. So this is the ideal of the string quartet. Ives, being American, like us, described this particular work as four men who converse, discuss, argue, fight, shake hands, shut up, then walk up the mountainside to view the firmament. This is a pretty raucous work, I have to say.
Yeah.
The four men in question are constantly interrupting each other. It's kind of like having a conversation with people we know here in Kyoto. So I felt right at home in this. I guess that's what kind of obsessed me about this.
It was almost like New York and New Jersey. New York and New Jersey yelling at each other across something. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, wait.
All right.
It's interesting.
Unlike the first quartet, it also features dissonant and atonal harmonies and fragmented melodies. Did you notice?
A little bit.
Yeah, you can't not you can't not notice.
Yeah.
Not a good work to fall asleep to. Yeah.
No.
Don't fall asleep to this. Okay, movement 1, conversations and discussions. Labeled 1911, probably composed 1913 and 1914. Andante moderato and moving to andante con spirito, adagio molto. One quick chromatic passage presents several patriotic tunes, suggesting a conversation about politics. I think, divisive politics between the North. We got to remember the Civil War was pretty close to Ives' time.
You got your Dixie in the middle there.
You got Dixie, and you have the other side singing Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean. Yeah. Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean. I don't know the rest of the words. You have to be in the military to know a lot of these tunes. They still play them in those marching bands. The beginning is atmospheric with light, long-held tones evoking the heavens. At least I thought so. Then the voices start. They not only interrupt, they play over each other. So like one is still talking while the other one starts, and they're kind of clashing, each in their own world. Once the patriotic tunes come in, the effect is pretty funny. They both play at the same time. Now, I want to mention, like, if you find this kind of atonal writing really sort of oppressive to listen to, think about what he's evoking here. Just these people just talking at and over and against each other, and it might become a little more enjoyable because you might kind of try to, like, work out what's happening. So it could be a fun work to listen to.
Imagine a presidential debate or something like that.
Oh boy, it could be. Imagine you're watching the news, like a big news station with like those four, when they have like multiple like
4 heads,
screens, 4 heads talking. They're all arguing with each other,
blathering. Yeah.
Second movement, arguments. So this is the I had a different interpretation of this than the booklet did. Allegro con spirito. The romantic second violinist is shouted down in a barrage of modernist dissonance by the rest. I actually didn't see it this way. I thought that the second violinist was trying to make peace with everybody.
That's
with
what
his
I
romantic utterings. Yeah,
I felt
and the other three are just get lost.
There was like sort of peacemaking. These folk melodies that are inserted between the conflicts, sort of like there's a intercessor who's sort of going in between, but it doesn't succeed. But that's how I got that sort of
me too,
back and forth of it.
Yeah, towards the end we hear a stream of melodic fragments, some American in origin, again Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean, marching through Georgia, Masses in the Cold Ground. Masses in the Cold Ground, that's a Stephen Foster tune.
Right.
I want to say something about that in a moment. And others borrowed from Tchaikovsky and Brahms symphonies. Okay. We also get a little bit of the Ode to Joy from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in there too. One of the fun things about music like this is recognizing the familiar themes as they pop out of the musical tapestry. This goes on for some time, this movement, and ends suddenly. By the way, the tune Masses in the Cold Ground is a slave singing about his master by Stephen Foster. The lyrics to this song, it's a really pretty melody. The lyrics, shall we say, haven't aged well. But this song it's also famous in Japan because it was sung by school children with different words, naturally. Right. I think it has something to do with like a temple bell in a small village, is the words.
Right.
And if anybody's a fan of movies, you can hear the children in school singing this at the end of Ozu's film Tokyo Story. So it's this tune, the Stephen Foster tune. It's really weird to hear. Japanese people often think that it's a Japanese song originally, but the melody is definitely American.
That Stephen Foster is one of the most important composers of American music, and he was wrongly painted with a brush of a sort of a slavery supporting sympathizer, which was not true at all.
Yeah, he wrote about his time.
Writing an idiom of the of his time, and his contribution to American music is one of the most important in volume and in quality, and that you just can't say enough.
He did write a lot of songs
in his lifetime. He never reaped much economic or enough notoriety for what he did, and I just want to say that because I think his music lives on around the world, and people don't even know that it's his music. Like the example you just said in Japan. So
they're sort of like a lot of Irving Berlin melodies. They just seem like they're as old as the hills. They've just always been around. Like they're anonymous folk tunes, but they're not. He wrote them himself.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Last movement, The Call of the Mountains. This is where it all gets resolved. Nature dissipates the arguments of men. Oh, if only. See, the thing is, we've solved this problem now because everybody's now on their computers all the time and they don't even notice nature's out there.
That's right.
So they're not going to go climb a mountain and be amazed at the
call
creation
of the smartphone.
The call of the smartphone. So this movement is now eliminated from our reality. Here's the solution you're looking for, America, right here in the third movement. Charles Ives gave it to you. Adagio, Andante, Adagio. This was composed 1914 to 1915. It's labeled as 1911 to 1913. So, okay, this brings the quartet to a peaceful resolution in D major. Also the goal of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, by the way, which opens D minor famously. Minor to major for Beethoven was like a big...
Right.
It's sunnier or something, okay? We have a clear statement of the hymn tune Bethany that merges into Westminster Chimes. You actually hear the... Westminster Chimes is what Big Ben in London plays, so you know that melody, right? Indeed. All are reconciled, but in the final bars, the viola offers a lone contradiction to the reconciling F major chord. Because they're Americans. They're never going to agree, really. And I love that little touch, actually, because it is so... It really does differentiate us from the rest of the world. We are unique in our, well, one wonders now, but in our ability to have all these competing and contrasting opinions and yet still be able to get along, although that seems to be falling away these days.
Once was.
Once was. Yeah, we were once able to do that, like when I was a kid. We're talking about Americans, after all. There's a kind of weariness to the beginning of this movement. It gradually emerges into something more harmonically solid. When the hymn appears, it's in the middle of voices, as the lower voices trudge and the higher ones buzz like flies. You can just make out Westminster Chimes in the middle voices. You got to be listening. You'll hear it. It goes by fast, though. It's a long walk to the ending, but the sound shimmers when we get there, except for that ornery viola. This piece will give your ears a bit of a workout, but the last work really shows off the quartet's ability. It's well played. I got obsessed by this work because I was trying to break it all down. I don't know. And I kind of, now I feel like I know it pretty well.
It's not easy listening. Yeah, Ives is always a challenge. Well, some of his works are easier to comprehend than others.
Right. But I find the early romantic ones to be a little boring, really, because
could be boring.
He's adopting a European style there, and here he's himself. So I rather like that.
Yeah, as you say, he's most interesting when he's picking up on these sort of rich folk traditions of American music, and then weaving them together to create something new. So yeah, I liked the first quartet. Although, as you say, in our current era, you may not be able to listen to it with the same ears as people of the day because
apparently people of the day didn't hear it. These didn't get performed really until after Ives died.
That was his intent or his inspiration, anyway.
Unless he got a quartet to play it at his house or something. I don't know.
The second quartet is this is a challenge. So if you're up for something intense to focus on, this is.
But it does have a narrative.
It does have it has a narrative, and if you read about what's going on, that'll help out a bit too, and you understand this sort of conversation or argumentative discourse kind of thing. It becomes more fun, and then you can identify the sort of back and forthness and the various levels of it. So it's dense music. If you're in the mood for it, it can be a lot of fun, and as a sort of strategy of composition, I think it's interesting, and it's more easily achieved in a quartet like this. You're not going to do this with a full orchestra as easily here, right. So it's easier to hear the different kind of parts and the interaction between them. So it's a difficult listen, but yeah, it's kind of interesting at the same time, as long as you're ready for that kind of thing. And I think that's sort of one of the appeals of Ives' music.
Okay, finally. We were really going long here on the classical music tonight.
Yeah.
We have a contemporary composer that we've actually already heard before.
Right.
Chinese composer Xiaogang Ye, born in 1955 in Shanghai, China. This album is called Winter. Guess why I sat on it for so long.
Yeah.
Guess it's winter now. And we're hearing this piece called Winter. It's cold out.
Yeah.
This is recorded, interestingly, by the Royal Scottish National Orchestra with two different conductors for different works, Gilbert Varga and José Serebrier. This is on the Beast label too, but this one is not an SACD. It's a CD, which is kind of odd. I wonder why they did that.
Because you can't record in DSD in winter.
Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe in Scotland. I don't know.
Could be.
But this one, okay, so we heard Ye's piece, Song of the Earth, paired with Gustav Mahler's. Okay, so those are famously Chinese poems, which Mahler set in a German translation and really made it a Mahler work. It really doesn't, the poems are just there to add, to the feeling. Whereas Ye decided he was going to take these back and kind of make them sort of Chinese again, which he did. And it was pretty interesting. I liked it enough, but I liked it enough to want to hear more, like to hear him sort of like on his own, without the Mahler kind of sort of shadow, or over his works and things like that. So I wanted to hear this disc of shorter works, and I've been sitting on this for quite a while simply because I figured, it'd be good to do this in the winter. Okay. This came out I guess in around September or so. Okay, first work. These are more vocal works. The Song of Sorrow and Gratification, Opus 67, which was completed in 2012. Written for bass, baritone, and orchestra. Texts by Shu Tong. I want to say something about the Chinese names. Beasts often will use the Western rendering of the Chinese name. So Xiaogang is the given name, and Ye is the family name. And the traditional way that Chinese people, as well as Japanese people and Asians, I guess most Asians, would write their names, the family name first. So he'd be Ye Xiaogang. But they're doing it the Western way, which is fine. But I'd like to call for consistency here. The texts are listed as being by Shu Tong. So they're given his family name first, Li, and Shu Tong his first name. It's very confusing.
Right.
So sometimes if you get usually the 2-syllable name is going to be the given name, but sometimes they'll have, 1-syllable names like Tan Dun, the composer, so which one is the, if you're not Chinese, you're not going to know which one the given name is. Anyway, so much for that. So anyway, Beast, please be consistent when you label these. Okay, Shu Tong was a monk. His Buddhist name is Hong Yi. So he goes by, you'll see poems by him under that name too. He was also an accomplished artist and poet. The performers in this are the bass baritone Sheng Yang, who we heard in Song of the Earth. He was the soloist in that, and the conductor in this case is Gilbert Varga. The title, The Song of Sorrow and Gratification, is an allusion to Shu Tong's final written words, which were, in Chinese, of course, worldly sorrows and gratifications are intertwined. It's a very
what does
Chinese
that mean?
Sentiment.
Doesn't help me at all. Come on.
Yeah. Well, it's a. I guess it's his Buddhist nature coming out. He's just noticing this. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't really help me gain nirvana though, but maybe if we meditate on it. Anyway, the texts are assembled from early poems reflecting the resentment, melancholy, and helplessness experienced by a young Li during a period of turmoil and humiliation in the history of China. That would be around 1901, 1902, when the British were there, wreaking havoc. Okay, this is before the Japanese went in, later. The 20th century was not a happy century for the Chinese. At least the beginning of it wasn't. All right, the first, this is a set of 4 songs. The first one is On a Sailing Boat at Dusk. The Beast recording does not give the Chinese names of these works, but if you're Chinese, you can probably figure out what they are if you know the poems. The poems here are compact, as Chinese poems tend to be. I'm kind of, I have enough kanji to be able to kind of work out, from the English, what the Chinese is saying, and they really don't say much. They're just giving you images, and I guess you're supposed to, if you know the language, you can do this more easily, and I guess you just sort of fill them in with your imagination, it's, There's a lot of interpretation being done when these are translated into English. The poems are compact, 2-line sections, yet they say a lot, judging by the English translation. This sounds like an atmospheric Western piece. Shen Yang, the bass baritone, and has a big, rich operatic voice, resonating, very impressive, very pleasing too. The text unfurls very slowly in this work. At the end, the text reads, "I am sad and choked with sobs at the disintegration of my native..." What does it say here? Line. I wrote line. It should be land. Okay. Okay. So apparently havoc is being wreaked when he was 21 years old. This last line bursts out. It's just really jumps out of the texture, and then it subsides at the end with the sorrow. Movement 2, Qingming Festival in Tianjin, which is composed after hearing... Oh, this is a combination of 2 poems. Also, a poem called Composed After Hearing a Song on a Sailing Boat. Both of these poems are from 1901. Shen Yang has a bit of a Paul Robeson sound here, this really rich bass, really deep. Long, drawn-out vowel sounds come out very musically. The composition has little bursts of orchestral color, like flowers opening in spring. I rather enjoyed that, the instrumentation bloomed around certain words. Movement 3, Revisiting Sholan Pavilion, a poem written in 1902. And also after Song Zhen's poem Cottage Painting in the Southern Part of Town, written in 1900. Also a fragmented line, written in 1894. So this combines 3 poems in the text. This moves a little faster. It has a chugging rhythm to it that we associate sort of with Chinese folk music a bit. So this one actually does sound kind of like, the music sounds like it has some kind of Chinese quality to it. The 4th movement, 7th Evening of the 7th Moon, 1902 poem. This poem, like all of them, dwells on descriptions of visible nature to convey inner feelings. There's something lightly Mahlerian about the orchestration, but not the melody in this and the 2nd movement. It ends with a gentle bell percussion, like a distant temple bell. It sounded really more like a church bell to my ears. You know, it sounded pretty Western. And Ye has spent a lot of time in the West these days. I think he's in Buffalo, New York now, or somewhere. Or maybe New York City by now, but he was in Buffalo for a while. Okay, next piece. Track 5, December Chrysanthemum, Opus 52B, for flute and orchestra. The flautist here is Sharon Bezaly, Israeli flutist, and she now lives in Sweden, by the way. The conductor here is José Serebrier. This was composed in memory of Ye's daughter Nini, who passed away at 18 months. Very sad. Oh. The chrysanthemum withering in white snow represents pain and bitterness in traditional East Asian art and aesthetics. Well, in Japan, it represents the emperor, actually. Yeah. But this is China. This is different. Okay, the composer wants the work to instill a sense of looking across a snow-covered expanse and seeing faraway traces of life, arousing a hope for rebirth in people's hearts. Very kind of sad and positive, as so many of these pieces are. It's a relatively tranquil, pretty piece with occasional stabs from the orchestra, followed by annoyed bird sounds from the flute. That's how I heard them. The flute makes some pretty original sounds at times. There's something like a double note created by the angle of blowing into it at one point that really stood out. It's pretty dramatic.
This one has like a pitch-bending bassoon in it, too. It's kind of interesting, yeah.
Yeah. Much of this piece has a bird-like quality to it. It's a lot of repeating, chirpy patterns. There's a brief ostinato pattern at 3 minutes, then another outburst from the orchestra. The orchestra seems to lead all the outbursts, so whatever they represent may be the world coming in on him, and the flute reacts to that. So I'm guessing the flute is the individual. I'm taking like a Beethoven approach to this. The piece is a long series of brief episodes. It's a series of brief episodes, sorry. And it's brief itself at 8 minutes and 30 seconds. I liked the lower end of the orchestration a lot in this. There were a lot of intriguing sounds, like the pitch bending you mentioned. The double note flute sound is heard again 1 minute from the end. It's a pretty interesting piece, actually.
I thought it kind of captures the power and bleakness of winter in those dark sounds. It's like December, as the days grow shorter, that sort of darkness. That's kind of the way I feel about Yi. I don't think he has. I don't get any memorable sense of melody from any of his compositions, really, but I get sort of lots of colors and textures.
Right. I was thinking the same thing. He's more of a. He's got a lot of Western influence in his music.
And
I hear a lot. Not only colors, but they're more like Mahlerian colors. They're not like Debussy. They're not pastels or French colors.
No, they're not light at all. They're and but these contrasts of tones. He uses a lot of percussion very well to accent things, and that's what I remember those kind of things. But the sort of I find the melodies are just sort of things that carry me to the next sort of texture of orchestral combinations that he'll create a mood with, rather than having a memorable line that I'll be humming afterwards or something.
Although we'll get to the very last piece on this disc.
Oh yeah, that's something completely different.
That's
it shows
a different
what
thing.
He can do something else if he wants to.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment. First, the title piece, Winter, Opus 28 for orchestra. This is the only work on the disc that on the album that doesn't have a soloist. It was composed in 1988, and the conductor is José Serebrier. Ye has composed 3 works with the title Winter. You would think he'd call them Winter 1, Winter 2, Winter 3, wouldn't you? But
I did read the notes that he was in Buffalo for a while, and having spent a lot of time out there, that's from like October to May, so you got a lot of time to compose wintry works.
Yeah, Buffalo is it's brutal.
Yeah, the snow in the parking lots there till May, so
Oh jeez, yeah. Buffalo, New York, everybody. All right, this is the first. This is the first of the 3 works called Winter that he wrote. It's composed in Buffalo. It's an expression of the composer's unusual for him, dark and gloomy mood at that time. But then again, wouldn't we all feel that way if we were living in Buffalo?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. This is the one that I thought had that pitch bending kind of thing in it, not the December one. Yeah, the December is pretty much all flute.
It's fluty.
But,
it's bird-like too. He really
with those breathy fingerings and things. But here you got more brass in the Winter one too. So
the opening of this piece is quiet and sounds frozen. It's long-held tunes. I think there's a bassoon playing the melody.
That's what I was talking about before. It's not in the December chrysanthemum, but in the Winter piece.
Right. This piece is very atmospheric and barely moves harmonically. Any melodic fragments are played over icy, long-held textures. I'm getting the impression here and from the vocal pieces that this composer likes the long-held tone. By the midpoint, strings start an upward climb with textures like the textures sound like bare tree branches reaching skyward, and the music gets more active and dramatic, and it reaches a big crescendo at about the 8-minute and 30-second mark, and there's some nice chimes at the end. Track 7, this is probably the piece that impressed me the most, and it's the one he wrote. It's the earliest one he wrote when he was a student. This was his graduation piece, The Brilliance of Western Liang, Opus 16, 1983. For violin and orchestra. The violinist is Wei Lu, and the conductor is Gilbert Varga. He went to the Central Conservatory of Music in Beijing, and this was his graduation piece. It was premiered by An Hong at the time, and the orchestra of the China National Opera House, conducted by Hu Bingshu. Western Liang was a 5th century kingdom in northwest China. This work has 2 main sources of inspiration: ancient musical scores from the Tang Dynasty, found in the Mogao Caves in Dunhuang, which is the capital of Western Ling, and the standing Buddhist statues in the Majishan Grottos near Xi'an, both along the ancient Silk Road. I hope I'm saying all these names right. I'm just going by the Roman writing of them. Okay, this is an attractive piece, well orchestrated.
Don't worry, we don't have any Chinese listeners anyway, because we're banned in China.
Well, not ones in China. Anyway, we might have some in the U.S.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. This is an attractive piece, well orchestrated, with some pleasing metal percussion punctuation. The violin line is highly melodic and romantic, so a romantic setting of Tang Dynasty type melodies, which I rather enjoyed. They were very appealing. It's the longest single movement work on the album at 16 minutes 14 seconds. There's a dance quality to the segment at around the 5-minute mark, and then that evaporates into something more dramatic within a minute. So a lot of like just changing textures in this piece. There's a nice metal percussion part just past 9 minutes 30 seconds, very gentle. That sounded like something from his Chinese background to me. There's a very pretty melody after this, a repeating short phrase that sounds like something Mendelssohn would come up with in his songs without words. The piece builds to an exciting, powerful ending with timpani and gongs, and a pretty overwhelming work for a graduation piece. Give this guy his degree. This is a really good work.
Yeah, this one I thought, it's of all the pieces here, it's got the most interesting contrasts and most interesting tonally. There's all kinds of interesting things going on.
And yet it's this graduation piece. He just threw all of his knowledge at the time into this piece.
You've got this, violin thing going on, huge clusters of orchestral chords. Again, a lot of percussion use, chimes and other things going on. He's using all of the tones available in an interesting way.
And we end. We end
cinematically here, kind of.
We end with a real crowd pleaser. This is the dessert in this program. Starry Sky, Opus 56, for piano, children's voices, women's choir, and orchestra. This is for piano. The pianist is Noriko Ogawa, Japanese pianist, who's playing on the clarinet and piano French chamber works on Bis last year. We really enjoyed. Royal Scottish National Orchestra Chorus, and José Serebrier is the conductor. Okay, now, this is a piece that most of our listeners know or have heard. If you watch the Beijing Olympics back in 2008 with that gigantic opening with all those percussion elements, at one point during that opening ceremony, the piano came out and Lang Lang played this piece. So that was the premiere at the Beijing Olympics in the opening ceremony. And it's a real crowd pleaser. It starts quietly and meditatively with quiet orchestral comments on each piano line. This piece is very warm and made for the public. The piano lines are modal, probably Chinese modes. I mean, I really don't know. But the women's chorus comes in. It's wordless, like in Debussy's nocturne titled Sirène. The following string melody after that is warm, big-boned, and crowd-pleasing. It's nice to have this work on a CD and in a complete form, because it was only fragmentary at the Olympics. I don't think they played the entire thing. I think he finished it later. It's a piece of history from that magical summer. Ogawa plays the piano part beautifully. In fact, it sounds fun to play with its constant flurries of modal figuration. It's an uplifting work, one to make you optimistic about the future, and it was said at the time that its purpose was to show the world the optimism of the Chinese. Do you think they're optimistic? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think
maybe the government's optimistic. I don't know.
I know a lot of young Chinese, and they're pretty bright and optimistic, more so than even Japanese.
More so than the Japanese kids are.
The government, I don't know, but that's a different thing. But I think young Chinese people have kind of optimism and exuberance that I find, interesting and encouraging. So I'm sure there's something to tap into there.
Yeah,
I thought this one, the way that, it's a simple this kind of pentatonic melody almost, and then building with the choir and the string theme. But I thought, I didn't think there would be that much to get out of this. But he does, he keeps it going for a long time, and then he finds different ways to build it with the rhythms, and then interesting orchestration and brass coming in. So he really with the structure here, it becomes more than I thought would be possible from that simple theme that I had heard. Like you say, we know this in a very shortened kind of form, but yeah, it's pretty impressive. He could easily do movie soundtracks if he can do this kind of thing.
He probably will.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a stopping point for Chinese, for just composers in general.
Yeah.
They just go for that. Yeah, so it's called Starry Sky. I would give that an immediate listen. I think it'll lift you up. It's a really nice piece.
Yeah, I'm kind of, this is the second recording we've done of his, and as I said, I think
it'll be the last for a while because I feel like we've got him.
Yeah,
depends what he puts out.
I don't find much memorable that sticks with me in the melodic development, but I do like what I like is the sense of contrasts of different elements, and then the full use of the orchestral colors and different kind of textures. I find that a very interesting sort of palette of, timbres and rhythms, and he uses percussion really well too. So I find that sort of kind of picturesque painting of sound very something interesting in his style. And so, that keeps me interested more than sort of following the melodic lines or anything else.
All right. And that's it for classical music this week. On to jazz.
It's jazz time.
Jazz time.
Right.
It's time to lighten up.
Yeah, I
after
think
all
so.
this serious music.
The jazz is not well. I don't know if we have light. I think we've got some pretty interesting stuff here. So we got an international program that's going to test our pronunciation skills too.
I actually did research, so
okay,
I'm
so
ready.
you can help me out here.
I can help you out
with languages that in which vowels are expensive. So we'll start. They have a wheel of fortune.
How many consonants can you put in a row there?
Exactly.
Oh.
Anyway, we'll start with the easy one. We're going to go American to begin with. And,
to go with the Ives and Barber, Samuel the Barber.
And we're going to Feel the Love. Great title.
From?
Feel the Love, baby. With a great name. You got to love this guy's name. Farnell Newton.
Yeah.
That's a good name. And,
he was born in Miami, I checked out here, but he lives somewhere else now.
Yeah. He was born in Miami. He's a big boy, too, if you see his picture. He's a big guy. And he was born in Miami. He attended Philadelphia High School for the Creative and Performing Arts. And
that's right. He's in Philadelphia now, I think. Right?
I think he's in Portland, Oregon.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
He's been all over. He did study at let's see, where did he study? Oberlin in Ohio. And,
nice.
He also has a master's degree in jazz studies and performance from Portland State in 2008. And since then, he's recorded and played with lots of performers, including Aretha Franklin, James Moody, Stevie Wonder even, Carl Denson, and Galactic, the group. And here he's with some performers we've heard before and we like very much.
Yeah, and other favorites of the podcast.
Yes, Art Hirahara on piano, who we're big fans of. Boris Kozlov.
One of our biggest albums of the year last year. One of our
Art
favorites. Boris Kozlov.
Kozlov, who we've heard a number of times with Dave Kikoski and others. And another recording, we've heard these three together. I guess they're often on this Posi-Tone Records, the label Farnell Newton's on here. And the great drummer and percussionist Rudy Royston. And so we've done a number of recordings. These fellows are featured on together. And on this album, Newton has got a bunch of different sax players sitting in. We've got Braxton Cook, Jaleel Shaw, and Patrick Cornelius on alto sax. We've also
made it hard for me to follow. There's so many different sax.
We've got Brandon Wright on tenor sax, Also, in the rhythm section, we've got Joe Strasser on drums on 3 tracks, swapping out for Royston. And let's see. Also, Michael Deese, who we've heard before, the trombonist. We featured one of his recordings, sits in on a track, too. So we've got interesting combination of personnel. And so we get a feel of Farnell Newton's trumpet playing. And this is a fun album. We start out with a track, an original by Newton called the title track, Feel the Love, which is a tribute to one of his music school professors. It's a Latin post-bop tune. This is just for quartet, so rhythm section in Newton on trumpet only. It's a nice funky piano intro by Hirahara, busy drumming by Royston. Newton brings on the Freddie Hubbard-like melody here, and it's one of those tunes where the B section changes to swing in contrast to the Latin beat, so that adds a bit of excitement to it. Newton is up straight away for a solo. He shows off some nice post-bop chops on the trumpet, and Hirahara gets a solo next, and he plays with a lot of rhythmic intensity. Hirahara sounds really good on this album, so it's a nice opening track.
Yeah, I felt like Hirahara really was the standout on this record, just in general. And also, this particular track, that kind of swinging rhythm that just keeps coming back. I mean, it's part of the whole structure of the chord changes and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to imagine you're a soloist and you know that's coming and you're playing this one thing. That must be a really funny thing to navigate.
Yeah, that was sort of like one of those post-bop type of things that got built in, and it always sets up a great kind of tension. You know, you can hear it in a lot of different groups, and, you know, a good drummer will set that up, you know, like an Art Blakey press roll or something. And then you get into that hard swing, and then you're back to the, you know, the Latin beat. Yeah. It's a great...
It's still exciting to this day to hear, really.
It always works. And so we're going to hear it a lot, actually, on this album and later, too. Yeah. Because you can't go wrong with it. I want to also mention,
this album is called Feel the Love, and I think that's a really nice title to start the new year with.
I think
Feel the Love. Let's feel the love in 2022.
The other interesting fact that I noticed looking up Newton, because I didn't know much about him, is that he's a father of 5 children.
Wow.
So he's got a lot of love, I guess. He also has his own jazz. Yeah, he's got his own jazz radio show on KMHD radio too. So, yeah, I don't know how he finds the time to do all this stuff, but he's got a lot of love, and comes through on this recording.
Maybe that's what it is.
Another love-themed tune, track 2, Affectionately, Roy. Tribute to Roy Hargrove, another Newton original. This one has like a rhythmic bass intro that becomes a riff. Here we've got Braxton Cook on alto. He doubles the melody with Newton. It's that kind of easy riding but funky tune. If you know Roy Hargrove's sort of style, he had an album called Ear Food. This sort of is evocative of that recording. Cook solos first. He's got a light and breezy tone. Hirahara gets a short solo, and then Newton is up. He gets some funky half-valve effects in his lines on this one. A nice tribute to the not recently, I don't know how long it is. He's no longer with us, Roy Hargrove, who I went to see.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed about this particular... Oh, gotta finish that sentence. I'm sorry.
That's right. Yeah, I had met him when I was in high school at a music festival, and then when he came to Osaka some years back, I went down to see his group. I was hoping to get a chance to talk to him, but it didn't work out that night. And then he's no longer with us anymore. So anyway, rest in peace, Roy Hargrove.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah,
I thought this piece again. It's got this. It's pretty wide open. So this I always think about this too. The soloist, you have a lot of space. You could do a lot, and then there are these like really. All of a sudden, there'll be these like complex, quick chord changes where you're kind of it's almost like kind of squeezing down a hallway as far as a soloist goes, because you don't have many options of what you can play and when the chords are like that. Yeah. So you really have to know when those are coming, and you got to be ready to get in there. Yeah, I just feel like that's tricky too. Funky
and relaxed, and then a sort of twist into a different place. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Track 3, a John Scofield tune, I'll Catch You. This is a funky drum intro here, joined by bass. Now we've got Jaleel Shaw on alto. He joins in with Newton on the funky melody. It kind of features these interval gaps in the melody. And this one also has a switch to a swing section in the melody. Newton solos first on this one. It's got a lot of bluesy licks over the minor modal blues changes in this tune. Shaw's up next. He works in and out of the chord changes. He gets some kind of intense spots with his tone. He brings on a nice edge before he simmers it back down. And on this one, the rhythm section really locks in together. And you'll notice that Hirahara's chord voicings stand out on this tune as well. 4 is another Newton original, A Child Not Yet Born. Interesting title. It's a slow ballad with a pretty melody. It shows off Newton's rich tone. Kozlov has a heartbeat like bass pulse that sounds good underneath everything. We've got Joe Strasser switching in on drums on this one, and Brendan Wright on tenor sax. Wright comes in for a section of the melody on his own before he joins in together on the final section of the melody head. Newton adds a lot of nicely accented notes to bring intensity to his solo on this one, and the rhythm section picks up the tempo to match the mood, so the tune sort of takes off a bit once we get to the solos. Wright swings nicely on his solo. He has a big warm sound on sax, and Hirahara shows off his great touch on the melody in his solo lines here. He gets up into the upper register and shows off kind of his trademark chiming chords.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, yeah, really nice playing.
I wrote like raining beautiful tones at the end.
Raining. He's such a great pianist. Yeah, we just
I like
can't
him a lot.
hear enough of this guy. Track 5, The Bluest Eyes, another Newton original. This is a Latin percussion roll and an ostinato bass line that set up Hirahara's choppy chords and a driving melody. It brings Shaw back in on alto with Newton here. This one switches up to swing again. He likes this pattern. All players do. It's so fun to play over. Newton solos first. He shows off some chromatic and bluesy ideas. A lot of Freddie Hubbard influence, I thought, on this tune. Shaw has some weaving legato lines in his solo, and then Hirahara mixes fast runs and then some real funky rhythms in his solo. This is a cool tune. Nice original composition here. Then we've got a few compositions from other musicians that Newton has been associated with. 6 is Littoral by Marcus Schultz Reynolds. This one has a really nice piano intro by Hirahara that works into a kind of bossa nova beat ballad once it gets going. We've got Patrick Cornelius on alto here. He harmonizes on the breezy melody and trades off sections with Newton. Strasser's here again on drums. Newton solos first. He keeps things exciting with staccato accented notes in between his other smoother phrases. And Cornelius has a solo as well. He has a warm tone, and his phrases have a nice balance of melodic direction and rhythmic drive. So it's a nice tune as well. 7, Pale by Sean Noel. Shaw is back again on alto here, and we get the addition of Michael Deese on trombone, so you get a really nice thick horn section line going on this here, and the kind of modern melody, jazz melodies worked in here. The solos follow a pattern of breaks and then change-ups of rhythm, so the rhythm is constantly changing up to keep things interesting. Shaw solos fluidly first, then Newton Hirohara's solo opens up into something different, and then he turns out some real fleeting lines and then some funky percussive chord playing. And Royston and Kozlov set a great groove. They really lock in together under everything. So it's a nice rhythmic treat on this tune. And then we go to The Force of Gravity. This is a tune by Marcus Schultz Reynolds as well. This is back to quartet format, so just Newton on trumpet. Kozlov bows the bass under the rubato beginning before switching to plucking that bounces the waltzing rhythm to this tune along. Newton plays connected and lyrical on this one, and Hirohara gets a big space to open up here with Royston using nice cymbal work and textures with brushes. So it's a nice tune as well. 9, another tune, this time Hirohara original, Laws of Motion. And we've got Strasser and Cornelius back on this one. It's a hard-swinging bop tune. The horn lines swing hard. Newton solos first. He gets in some nice accents, melodic descending phrases, and Cornelius swings hard in a really melodic solo as well. Hirohara's swinging really hard too, and he gets some more kind of punctuated chords in here. He's really intense on this recording. He's a great accompanist. He really knows how to add fire and push, soloists along. Track 10 is an interesting title, Lawn Dart.
Now, lawn darts were these giant darts, and I think
Jarts,
they had...
right?
No, jarts are different.
Are they?
I think, because jarts had a metal point on them.
Right.
This was completely insane. These were a children's toy in the 70s, and they were like giant darts with a huge, harpoon-like
Yeah, we call them Killer Kid darts, right?
Yeah, Killer Kid darts. Jeez, you could kill people with these things. It was crazy, and they sold as a children's toy. But I think lawn darts don't have the pointy. I think they're kind of more of they're made to balance or something.
Oh, okay.
They're kind of like a rubber. I don't know what they are, but
safety edge.
You're thinking of jarts. They were insane. Yeah. This one of the 1970s where they just wanted us all to die, didn't they?
Yeah, and he had a big.
I remember
a hoop you would set out. Yeah, I remember that well.
I remember in my schoolyard too. There was there were these metal rungs that went up this cement wall, and when you get to the top of the cement wall, there's just nothing there to kind of step up on. So you have to kind of climb back down. I mean, the only thing you could do is climb up and down or fall off and crack your head on the concrete below. Yeah. It was so horrible, the things they made us do.
All our friends who never graduated.
Oh, we laugh now, but little did we know that how dangerous life was back then.
Anyway, this tune
I think Americans hated children back then. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we weeded them out. Only the strong survived. Especially weeding with the lawn dart. Yeah. Anyway, this is a tune by
jarts,
Peter. Peter Brendler. We've got Braxton Cook back on alto. We've got changing rhythms, start and stop unison horn and bass melody line with no piano that set this tune apart. Hirohara joins in midway through Newton's solo, which has some
I said that this piece had a goofy theme, angular goofy theme. It's kind of something... Yeah,
I'm imagining lawn darts flying through the air.
Maybe.
The beat swells and opens up on this one. Cook solos freely as well. Cymbals and bass reset things when Hirohara starts to solo. Listen to Kozlov's changing bass lines in this one. He's a really great bass player, always adapting to what's going on around him. Hirohara gets some dissonant clusters and fades out with high tinkles before Royston mixes things up on the drum kit for a bit at the end. This is a lot of fun freedom in this tune. And
this track made me contemplate and how amazing it was that I actually survived childhood.
Yeah. Imagined all those dangerous things
in the 70s. Oh man.
Yeah. You just go out. Your mom would just say, go outside and play, not like parents today where like you're worried about your kid getting kidnapped or falling. We would just go out and do all this dangerous stuff. And
if only they knew what we got up to, they would never let us out in the first place. And it wasn't like other people were like harassing us. It was us doing it to each other.
We did our own damage.
Yeah, boy.
And the last tune, finally a Newton original, Our Chosen Family. Be nice if you could choose your family. Anyway, back to the quartet for the final tune here. It's got an energetic Latin beat, open kind of modal chord intro. It simmers into a ballad when Newton comes in, but Kozlov's bass beats are kind of spring-loaded and they launch into a motion again as Royston feeds it on the cymbals. It settles and rises again as Newton rides the waves of what's going on. There's really nice Kozlov pulses and change-ups that feed Hirohata's bouncy solo on this one. It's kind of a Woody Shaw influence, I thought, in his composition here. You can tell Newton's trumpet influences, also in his playing, and it's a fun, kind of free-spirited tune to end things up. I enjoyed this album. Newton shows a nice concept, good playing. The compositions are interesting, and you've got a real variety of sax companions here. Deese's trombone for spice on one tune, and this really great Posi-Tone rhythm section. These guys are a nice combination. So I thought it's a strong release and really enjoyable piece overall. So, pick it up, listen to it, and, feel the love.
Yeah, I enjoyed this album too, and especially this last track. It was very warm. I liked the Our Chosen Family. It's obviously a family he wants to be in. So, from the sound of it. For me, Art Hirohata really stole the show on this. I mean, everybody was great, but I was just so drawn in like magnetically to his playing. The pianist, Art Hirohata. I really just loved everything he did on this record. And because he's not the soloist, like on the album we chose last year as one of the best of the year, he really just kind of steps out of what we normally hear him do. Like he does a few really almost like dissonant sounding things, but here he's kind of accompanying, and I really just love him in this role. Yeah. So I'd listen to this just for him if you like him.
Yeah, he's really good.
And I do like that album though.
That's a good one too. Yeah. And he just works together. Royston's an awesome drummer with like, small textures and things that he works in, and Kozlov too. And these guys work well together, and they're like a single unit when they play. So.
I think of this as sort of like Kenny Barron on the Joe Farnsworth album, where he's in that mode, that New York style. Right. Whereas Hirohata here, he's more in his like French impressionist mode, I guess. He's playing a lot of like McCoy Tyner, Claude Debussy influenced kind of chords, and it's really light. So I really enjoyed him all the way through. He's like doing one of the many things he can do.
It's hard not to listen to what he's doing, even when there's somebody soloing over it, because he's that interesting.
It's true. Yeah.
All right, and the other two albums we're going to branch out into. I've tried to, keep things as international as possible, because I'm always interested in, what's going on with jazz around the world, and especially, we look at like the Grammy Award nominees, they're boringly American, and boringly I say because
even the classical ones are mostly American. It's really nuts. Okay. It's really a European form.
Granted, jazz is an American art form, and so we can expect despite the
cutting edge is generally going to be in America.
Yeah, despite the lack
they're not nominating cutting edge albums.
Despite the lack of awareness and appreciation by Americans of its own native art form. But my criticism with all these awards things is it's always the same people. We know Chick Corea was great. We know it. We don't have to keep giving him awards.
Especially now that he's gone, too. He's not going to be able to enjoy it.
Who cares about awards anyway? I mean, I don't like the idea of awards. The only thing I like about awards is if it gives you something new to listen to, which usually the Grammys don't.
But it introduces like people who don't normally listen to music to something. I guess. So it serves a purpose.
But anyway, I just don't like them.
Plus, you have that thing on your fireplace. You give it to your grandkids.
Yeah, I guess.
Think you're amazing.
But I've tried to branch out, and so we've listened to over the last year, we've heard a lot of Italian musicians, Italian jazz, because Italians are good at any kind of music. Yeah. They're good at any kind of music. They invented music, so they're good at it.
They invented music.
Yeah.
There was no music, then we invented music.
No, yeah, they were hitting sticks and stones until the Italians came along. You know,
what is it like in The Sopranos? Like right at the beginning of the series when they go into the I think it's a Starbucks or some one of those coffee shops, and they're looking at all the the Italian coffin making stuff. He says, "It was who was it?" And he says, "We gave these people, the Americans, we gave these people the gift of our culture when all they had was Puzzi." The gift of our culture. I love that.
I like that. Yeah, but we've heard we've heard Italian jazz. We've also heard a lot of Scandinavian jazz, Norway, Denmark, and some French jazz too. But tonight we've got a couple countries we haven't heard from yet, and so this was sort of expanding out. And the first one, fittingly, is called Northern Journey by Manuel Dunkel. Okay. And this is from Finland.
Yeah.
Did you know they have jazz in Finland? Well, yes, they do.
Finnish jazz.
Finnish, yeah.
They have heavy metal in Finland, too.
They really like that. Yeah, it fits
they
that
like
dark.
It a lot.
Yeah, that's where I
remember this Finnish heavy metal band came to Japan, and like every Finnish person I knew went there, and they were like hanging out with the band afterwards.
It might be the only really place where heavy metal is still going strong. I don't know.
Oh, it's going strong. It's always kind of underground. One of the nice things about heavy metal is it's not commercial, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's got its big scene, and the rest of us don't have to listen to it. It's great.
Yeah. Anyway, in jazz, Dunkel's about sort of our generation, born 1971. He's one of the top Finnish jazz musicians. He's a very kind of refined saxophone technique and sound, and largely influenced by, of course, John Coltrane, but also the great more modern sax player, Michael Brecker. And so he's well known in Finland and also Europe. And let's see, he's 1990. He entered the Sibelius Academy jazz program in Helsinki, and he earned his master's in 2004. He's been on the professional scene for the last 20 years or so. And so this one, Northern Journey, is on Eclipse Music. We've got Dunkel on tenor and soprano sax. He's also written all the compositions, all original music here. I've got Alexei Tuomaria on piano, Antti Latjanen bass, and Jaska Lukerinen on drums. And we start out with a tune called Puzzle. And this is an interesting one to start out with. It's got this repeating bass in piano riff that's based on this interesting interval. If you listen to it, it sort of goes from like G, C, E, C, G, G, C sharp, E, C sharp, G. So it sort of goes up to tritone, or that kind of implies like a Lydian scale.
Our favorite interval.
Yeah, the basis. Yeah, tritone. So it forms the basis for this tune, and then it's sort of on this even beat that it breaks into sort of this walking bass line. So you get this interesting harmonic progression. Dunkel blows the melody with an easy, good sense of swing, but he has some bite in his phrasing. Right away you get the sense of Coltrane and Brecker in the formation of his concept. But he swings a good solo too. Then the piano solo, Tuomaria, he swings really nicely as well. And there's a section you'll hear in his left hand where he emphasizes this tritone sort of tension that builds in contrast to the left hand. That's a nice start. Interesting kind of harmonic.
I like the
puzzle.
way the rhythm. I like the way the rhythm changed under him when he kind of got to take a solo. He got this kind of groovy 60s sounding rhythm. It was really cool.
So, a nice, interesting original composition too, cool title, New Planets. Where are they? Maybe right here. Got a medium tempo tune. It starts with these alternating piano chords. Dunkel brings in kind of an easy loping melody. Then his solo has a lot of rhythmic variety, weaving phrases through the harmonies. He gets into the upper register. The pianist, Tuomurila, takes a rhythmic approach to his solo here, too. He has a very precise kind of attack. Lukrenson mixes up the drums nicely behind the riffs, gets some cool rhythmic ideas, and the tune ends up with a repeated sax groove and bass riff. There's a lot of nice harmonies in this tune, and I found that all of Dunkel's compositions, the harmonic progressions are really well thought out and interesting. So he's a good composer as well as a player. Track 3 is called Law of Nature. It begins with a drum tom intro. Add an ostinato bass riff and some dark rolling piano chords. Dunkel switches to soprano here, and has a really nice, thick and fluid tone. It's not nasal at all, which can be the annoying side of soprano sax. Not in this case. The harmony is nice on this tune. It's like a dark minor and then kind of like voodoo kind of thing that changes to an uplifting major chord kind of contrast. So Dunkel blows in and out of the chords, shows his Coltrane influence, nice arc to his solo structure, builds it up to a climax. Tuomurila keeps the rhythm kind of funky behind his solo, and he finds a cool mix of bluesy dissonance before he gets back to the rolling chords that set up the atmosphere. So, cool tune. 4, Mr. Nelson. I'm not sure who that refers to. If it's Oliver Nelson, the sax player, or some other Nelson. I don't know.
Or could just be some guy.
Yeah, it could be some guy, Nelson. Yeah, Nelson
Some
Riddle.
teacher he had once.
Yeah,
Who knows?
Who knows? Anyway, it's an interesting composition. There's a lot of harmonic movement, catchy, repeated descending line section in the melody. Lotyanen works hard for Dunkel's cello, and the piano drops out. It gives him some space to expand harmonically, which he does, but always just ties his ideas together well. Tuomurila jumps back in for a solo that jumps around a lot, but features a lot of rhythmic chords too. It's kind of cool. And then sax, piano, and drums trade off 8-bar solo phrases and gives some spotlight to Lukrenin too. It's a really fun tune. I like this one a lot. 5, we've got a tune, Yesterday's Dream. It's a 6/8 swinging ballad, pretty harmonies. Dunkel shows nice phrasing on the melody. The pianist Tuomurila is up for a solo first, well-articulated runs, interesting interval figures. Dunkel's solo is a nice mix of lyrical playing and agility through fast figures. And Lotyanen gets a nice chance for a solo here as well. He shows a good sense of melody and a great woody bass tone. And then you think the tune's over, but there's an extra ending phrase that's a nice surprise. So it's a pretty tune. 6, we get interesting tune, Komodo Dragon. Not something you think you're going to encounter in Finland, but
no, it starts with a C too. It's usually spelled with a K. So I'm kind of wondering if he's not referencing the Italian word comodo, comfortable.
It could be, comfortable dragon. I'm not sure, but
the comfortable dragon. I don't know.
It's a syncopated, ominous modal chord intro here.
Yeah.
Fast
it sounds
cymbals.
like open fifths in the bass, too, the piano bass, A
fast cymbal work behind that. Dunkel plays the fast melody, which has cool bass and left-hand piano answer phrases to it. And then he starts his own solo over just bass and drums. Piano comes back in spots to feed some chords. And Dunkel really works up the intensity, blows hard on this tune. The drummer, Lukrenin, some great cymbal work behind here, and Tuomurila's solo is very intense too. Got these long rapid fire lines, repeated rhythmic figures. It's a cool, intense tune. Track 7, My Heart Says. This is a slow 4/4 ballad. Again, Dunkel's compositions are really nice, really pretty harmonies here. After the melody, the bass player Lotyanen a really nice melodic woody solo. It sounds really lovely. Piano solo here too has some interesting rhythmic figures. They cross the lines over the meter. He's just crossing over phrases with expanded ideas, gives a lot of sense of forward motion. And Dunkel on his own sax solo gets a slow fire burning, gets more intense, but he keeps it lyrical. And some final flurries in the short sax cadenza at the end. And the recording ends up with the title track, Northern Journey. Starts with a mysterious ascending bass riff and some drumming that introduces a longing sax melody that has a kind of Latin beat to it. Dunkel plays it sultry and intense in his solo. It's helped with some really nice piano descending chords. And then the piano solo is inspired here as well. Dunkel takes it out smoothly over another bass riff to end the recording. So this is new to me. Didn't know much about Finnish jazz or Dunkel, but he shows a really nice modern tenor sensibility. He's taken his Coltrane vitamins and also all the things Brecker has done. Kind of got his original concept. Here he's got an intriguing tone, ample technique, nice compositions. They're varied, attractive, with interesting harmonies, and the rhythm section is good here and helps everything out work too. So I thought it's a good recording.
Yeah, I just found that all these works, they're pretty inventive, rhythmically, harmonically. I really enjoyed them, actually. It was pretty fresh sounding without being like, breaking tremendous new ground. I just, it was an enjoyable recording.
Yeah, they're enjoyable, and especially the harmonies, I thought, they kept surprising me. And I think the best kind of good players who compose well too, they sort of create these little problems for themselves to solve. Right. And so they make for these kind of fresh movements of harmony. And I found that here, that I was, would be listening to something and it would go somewhere unexpected. I say, oh, that's cool. And that's cool. So not only is he a good sax player, but he writes really nice, fresh kind of material too.
Yeah, worth a listen. Give that a listen.
Yeah, take a listen. Finland has great jazz too. And now...
So does
Poland.
Poland.
Yeah, and so this is on the Polski radio recording label. Perfect, yeah. Moniuszko Jazz.
Yeah.
By Piotr Baron.
Yeah. Now, Stanislaw Moniuszko was a Polish composer in the Romantic era, 1819 to 1872. Yeah.
He's sort of like the father of modern Polish classical music.
Maybe that would be Chopin, right? But I don't know.
But I think more like, how can I say?
Yeah.
Like
the father, but
like folk tunes and it's kind of working things, I
don't know anything about this composer, to be honest, Moniuszko. Yeah,
I think he's more like an earthy. That's what my impression was. He was more. I know he wrote opera too. I think.
Right. He did everything. The operas, orchestral
Chopin
works,
is like
songs.
We think of, as the
he's piano only.
The piano,
basically.
Great. Anyway, and I don't know how this relates to that composer or not. I couldn't find much information about this, but I do know that the artist Piotr Baron is, well-respected European Polish-born saxophonist. He's born in Wrocław, Poland, 1961. He's performed with all the top Polish and European jazz musicians, and his other list of great collaborators with music include even Ray Charles, Art Farmer, Billy Harper, David Murray, Victor Lewis, and one of my favorite pianists, John Hicks. As a sideman, he's recorded on more than 80 albums, and he's also had his own jazz radio show, which I guess he's had on and off, and he's back doing again now. He's one of the top players from Poland and Europe in general. And this is his latest recording. He's here on various saxophones and also, as we'll see, bass clarinet, which is always cool.
That was very cool.
Yeah. We've got Mikhail Toka, piano, Robert Moniuszko, trumpet and flugelhorn. I'm going to have a hard time with these names here now.
I didn't check out the names of his...
Masya Adamchak on bass.
Okay.
Lucas Jata, is it? Let me see if I can get this name right. Polish is really hard for pronunciation, you know.
Well, it's hard to... You have all these consonants. You don't really know
let me see here.
What they're all saying.
I think it's Juta.
Juta, okay.
Juta. Lucas Juta on drums. And as we said, is this after Stanislaw Moniuszko, the Polish composer? It's hard to know because the tunes here seem to be sort of like, I don't know, Catholic influenced.
Well, they're going to be after Moniuszko, the composer, so I'm guessing it's one of his church works.
Could be one of his works, but I couldn't find anything about those works specifically that wasn't in Polish, and I didn't have time to translate all of this stuff. Anyway, so we've got, the first one's not Polish, but...
it's Agnus Dei, right?
The Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God prayer, which, many think is a religious work, although this doesn't sound like something you'd hear in church, but it's pretty cool. Starts out with a drum intro. We've got some really chiming piano chords. And here we've got Baron on soprano sax and Moniuszko on trumpet. And so they share the melody here. And Juta keeps the drum beat mixed up and intense underneath. This guy's a really heavy drummer, as you'll come to see as you listen to this. He may be... have more of a rock background too, just because he's very intense. Baron solo's first here. You get a sense of his sound. A great thick tone. Again, not a nasal soprano sound at all, but this guy's got one of those really thick soprano tones. Very fluid, but he can also pull out a strangulation, a la David Liebman, as we heard recently, so he can get the sort of different effects of tone.
This solo goes into an odd tonal place, too. It sounds like he's playing one of the more odd-sounding modes when he does this. Yeah, it
gets very harmonically advanced here. Adamczyk has a nice staccato bass hits and glisses underneath this. And I was also, on this whole album, I'm impressed with Moniuszko on trumpet. He works really skillfully through the harmonic modes on this tune. Also, a lot of skillfully used chromaticism in his fluid lines. Stylistically, he reminds me a lot of Randy Brecker in his flowing lines and tone.
I did say athletic for him.
Yeah, and that's a great influence to have. Things come down for Toka's piano solo at the beginning. He starts with some kind of disjointed lines and trills. Works through some harmonic ideas and then gets some rapidly repeating notes and prettier rolling harmonic ideas. The groove returns towards the end of his solo. He keeps the intensity going. And right when the melody comes back, he keeps that going underneath everything there. So it's kind of a cool tune.
A lot of energy and commitment by the players in this track.
They're really intense on this track and this whole album. The second track, Aria, I don't know how you pronounce it.
Aria Zucurantem,
which I guess is area with a chime.
That's what I got.
Yeah. This one has a dancing bass line and toms at the beginning. It gives it kind of a skippy rhythm. Baron's on tenor on this one. Trumpet is harmonizing with this very kind of happy melody. It breaks into a fast swing after a crashing break from Zura on drums. Baron solo's first. He swings hard. He's got a very breathy tenor tone. Moniuszko has a swinging solo, and then there's a piano solo here that's got some nice digging rhythmic figures. And then we've got a drum solo here. This Juta, he's a really heavy hitter, and he really pounds on this one. Then it returns to the swinging melody. There's kind of a false ending on this tune, and kind of a reprise into the skipping beat with Takaj chiming and tinkling to a happy finish. It's a very kind of intense tune. 3, Piesem Pokutna.
Yeah,
Song of Penance.
Pokutna I've got.
Pokutna, yeah. Song of Penance. Yep. A pretty piano intro. Bass clarinet and flugelhorn here. They play a slow, plaintive melody that's in contrast to the very bright piano figures that are going on behind it. So the real interesting thing in movement is in the accompaniment, although the fatness of the bass clarinet draws you in. The piano takes over, soloing kind of wistfully. There's well-placed bass lines underneath that. Then Baron solos on the bass clarinet. He plays...
That was awesome.
Relaxed.
Great sound.
His playing style is relaxed, but the tone is so huge. And when he scoops down low, it's like kind of, resonates everything in your living room.
If I heard this in my living room, it would be a nice chest cavity kind of rumble in there.
Moniuszko keeps the soft, dreamy mood because he switched to flugelhorn here. He gets some motion with faster lines when the tempo picks up, but he keeps his articulation smooth. Adamczak has a bass solo next. It's very melodic and rhythmic with soft attacks. So although he emphasizes the rhythm, it's kind of soft in nature. The horns come back with the melody, and the piano dances above the thick textures again. This is really beautiful. This is a standout. There's only 5 tracks here, but this one I thought is just with the tone of the bass clarinet is just great.
The bass clarinet was fantastic. I thought though the opening melody, it's a very funereal theme, so it's kind of down, I think. Yeah, that really made the piece for me. The bass clarinet. I love that sound.
Then we've got let's see, how can we pronounce this?
I did this.
Okay.
Pieszen Wieczorna.
Pieszen Wieczorna, the evening song.
Yes.
And what is interesting about this...
Thank you to the magic of the internet for that pronunciation.
Glad you got that. I looked it up, but I forgot it. It's a swinging tune, but it's in 5/4. So a time signature we don't hear all that often. But they make it sound natural here. Baron's back on tenor. Moniuszko on the flugelhorn still. They trade off parts on the melody. Moniuszko has another really fluid solo here. He shows off his agility on the smooth flugelhorn. But interestingly, Baron switches to soprano sax when he solos. He's swinging hard here, but he also gets some swooping kind of tones, and he's pushed by Tokaj's rhythmic piano chords, who takes over next with a very happy-sounding piano solo in contrast. And he's got some blazing runs and bluesy figures here. The horns return for the melody, and everybody jams out a bit until the ending over some more chiming piano chords. And it's a short album. The tracks are kind of long with longer solos, but we only got 5 tunes. The last one is called Rota. And I don't know if this refers to the Catholic Church kind of, judicial body or something, or if it's something else.
What makes you think that?
I don't know, just because it's all kind of, the other pieces were sort of religious.
Right away I thought, Nino Rota, but how could that have anything to do with Moniuszko?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I can't figure out.
It's kind of...
it certainly didn't sound like anything that would be a tribute to Nino Rota. I actually tried to look for like something in Moniuszko's music, but I couldn't figure this out.
No, I have no idea. I don't know if it's the Isle of Rota in the Mariana Islands either. Probably not.
I doubt that.
No idea. It could be some kind of like bread or something. No idea. Anyway, the tune itself.
Rota bread.
Yeah, Rota bread. It's got sort of complex Latin drum rhythms, syncopated piano chords, and this ostinato bass line that makes a contrast for the lyrical unison horn melodies on the tune. Moniuszko is back on trumpet, and he solos first here. He's more chromatic and harmonically explorative here. Baron is next on tenor. He plays a lot of interesting lines, rapid figures, but with soft articulation. Tokaj's piano solo makes the most of the rhythm. He adds a lot of syncopated and hard attacked chords to his lines. And Jutta working hard behind it all on drums the whole time. This guy's a busy, calorie-burning drummer, and he gets a chance to jam out at the end of the tune over kind of a bass pattern. I think he had a few espressos to power up before this tune because he gets to work hard. So that's it. Only 5 tunes here, but they're extended. Some of them are up to 11 minutes, so the solos are longer. I thought, Baron shows he's got great chops, class, tenor sax, soprano sax, bass clarinet, and he's got a really nice group of musicians, particularly Moniuszko on trumpet. His skills impressed me a lot. He's got world-class musicianship, great solos, nice variety of compositions, and Baron's woodwind arsenal is formidable, especially when you pull out the bass clarinet. It's kind of like a bazooka. Everybody better sit back and get ready, for those big tones. So,
and it makes a great sound too.
Yeah. So Polish jazz. Yeah.
Yeah, not only that, but they had so much, again, like I'm going to repeat, energy and commitment. The commitment to these works. These they really felt like they were really locked in to putting these across. I really appreciated that a lot.
Yeah. And both this, Finland, it's not gonna be listed in the Grammy Awards or anything American-centric, but these are great musicians, as good as anyone you're going to hear. And
and you'll probably hear them in the U.S. too, because I'm sure they go out there quite a bit.
So
as at least sidemen,
international spice to your jazz repertoire with these.
Jazz, it's an American form. It is international, though. It has been for quite some time. And I think we need to really acknowledge that more, because there's some great jazz musicians all over the world now.
All over the world, yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's a shame.
Including Asia and North Africa, too.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
It's a shame that, Americans don't know this music anymore. Most, you know what I'm saying? The average person.
Well, part of our reason for being is to bring it back to them,
But the thing is,
there's a jazz audience, but we want to reach someone beyond that. We want to get people listening.
Good music hits the ear of musicians starting from any culture to any other culture around the world. It's this sort of woke idea of cultural appropriation that's nonsense in music. Great music, once you release it, it's going to inspire someone somewhere.
Yeah, music by its nature wants to be shared. It just kind of, you just absorb it. It's just, and
then the onus is on.
It brings people together.
The person who hears it, if they're inspired enough to want, anyone can listen to it and think it's great, which is why jazz has fans around the world in Japan and other places. And then if you hear a music that's from a foreign culture that you don't know anything about, if we hear flamenco music or something, you're not going to be a good flamenco player by, diddling in your own room. You're going to have to go and explore what that music and cultural, reference points are about. But there are people who heard jazz music or any other style of music around the world, and it inspired them to become, better musicians and absorb themselves in that tradition and culture, and then bring something new to it. And, so I think that's, jazz is an international music now. So.
Yeah, remember, America has exported its culture pretty aggressively. So it's a known quantity, like abroad. People know quite a bit about it. And also, especially after World War II, jazz really, especially in Japan, it really picked up here. and just all over Europe too. It just became, it slowly grew from, after, the war. America was all over the place then. And it's just you put down new roots and grew in those various places as well.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
So I'm always interested to see what's popping up in all the different countries around the globe.
Yeah, I like that too.
These are two really good picks of...
It's really exciting when music that you really love, like, for me, like, classical music, jazz, if music we're really familiar with, and then it gets into foreign cultures, and what they're going to do with it is always really fascinating to me.
Add a little spice.
It's always going to be a little different. There's going to be some element of their culture they're going to put into it. I really love that.
Jazz has always been a sponge. I mean, even, American players and...
Well, all music is.
Yeah. I mean, they were experimenting with, Afro-Cuban rhythms and Indian music and other types of things, along the way. And classical music too.
I don't think the Indian music instrumentation or the experiments went very well, except for Coltrane. I think he had a lot of really amazing results with that.
The modal concept, went added a lot to how jazz would shape up. And
maybe I'll take that back, because now I'm thinking about Pharoah Sanders. He had a lot of Indian kind of like sort of melodic structures in his playing too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's all good, and I just think we should. And now you can hear all these interesting things from around the globe. So we'll be continuing to explore the international possibilities. We've got Chinese classical music and Polish and Finnish jazz music. It's pretty international tonight.
Right.
And we're just getting started. Number one.
It's going to be an international year.
Of, the number one episode for 2022. Episode 44.
We were all around the world in one episode.
All around the world in one episode. Where can we go from here?
Maybe that's our title. Oh.
Around the world in one episode?
We'll have to discuss this.
Something, we'll have to do something about it. That's a good inspiration.
Yeah.
So, there you have it. We're just getting started. It's a new year. Where are we going to go? You'll have to listen. Tune in again. Every week this year for more international...
Gonna try.
We'll try.
52 weeks. Here we go.
52.
One down, 51 to go.
Yeah. So
actually, there might be 53 episodes, though. It depends on when the weeks fall. We might have.
We'll get some extra ones. We'll put some extra ones in there.
We'll probably have some extra ones too.
Interviews coming up too. So. Yeah. Anyway, if you've made it this far to the end of the episode, listeners, Happy New Year. Thanks for sticking with us. This has been episode 44 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. Please do take a moment to like or subscribe on whatever platform you're on. Again, if you have any comments, questions, you want to contact us directly, that's Adult Music Podcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll be back again next week with 6 new recordings for episode 45. So until then, Happy New Year. Stay tuned, and we'll see you again next time.